Chapter 661. Chu Yang smiled bitterly, but he did not show it on his face. This time, he was indeed taking a huge risk. Now, it was a matter of life and death. Once the fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword appeared, he really did not have much confidence. He had a feeling that everything seemed to be following some kind of mysterious path and was proceeding in an orderly manner. Including his heaven-defying actions to change his fate, it seemed to be on this path that had already been set. Everything was logical. For example, after his rebirth, he first punished Shi Qianshan and caused a series of events. That was why he was recognized by Wu Yunliang. That was why he entered Iron Cloud and met Gu Duxing. Because he met Gu Duxing, he met Dong Wushang, Luo Kadi, GMO and Rui Butong. Because he met these brothers, the current three heavens were formed. And because of them, he met Ao Xie Yun and Xie Dan Qiong. When everything was put together, it created the storm of the three heavens. The fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword was at the Lake of Despair. And the final location that Mo Tianji chose to resolve this storm was coincidentally at the Lake of Despair. Everything was strange. But it was so logical that no one could find any fault with it. Perhaps in the entire world, only he who had been reborn could feel the traces of such manipulation. Step by step, he was pushing himself towards the path of the Calamity Sword Master. If there were no accidents, he would definitely be able to obtain the complete Calamity Sword and unify the heavenly layer after this ingenious arrangement. He would walk the common path of all the previous Calamity Sword Masters. But today's events had clearly taken a turn. This was something that could be felt from the severe injury to his spirit. This time, he had stubbornly insisted on getting injured. Only then did he completely get rid of the traces of control. To become a complete version of himself. A complete path. But there was no doubt that in this world, to be a complete version of himself, the price to pay would be his life. Life, so what? Chu Yang smiled arrogantly. Do you want me to watch them die? Are all the previous Calamity Sword Masters so cruel and cold-blooded? Then, even if I don't become the Calamity Sword Master, what can I do? The Sword Spirit sighed and said, Lord Sword Lord, you shouldn't have let me do this. I was forced by you to forget something important. What's the big matter? Chu Yang asked quietly. His voice carried a chill. They won't die. Even if I don't do anything and you don't do anything, they won't die. The Sword Spirit heaved a long sigh. It was too late for regrets. Because they were chosen by the Lord. They were destined to accompany the Lord and charge into the heavens. How could they die? There will definitely be another savior. Chu Yang said lightly, I know. Before you made your move, I had already thought about this problem. You know? The Sword Spirit looked at him, flabbergasted. His face was full of disbelief. You've thought about this problem? Then why did you ask me to do it? Do you know that you will die if you do this? Dying is no big deal. Chu Yang insipidly said, I've thought about it and I'm sure of it. But I still can't stand it. They're dying in front of me. They're bleeding in front of me. But I'm still indifferent. I'm only pinning my hopes on a slim hope. I'm not so cold-blooded. After all, they're my brothers. And this operation is very strange. It's clearly acting according to a fixed script. This feeling is too obvious. Chu Yang said coldly, they won't blame me if I don't do anything when they're in danger this time. But they'll definitely feel uncomfortable afterward. Because I'm right next to them. But I didn't do anything. This is the first reason. Secondly, I'll feel even more uncomfortable when I face them in the future. I'll feel guilty and apologetic. I'll feel that I'm despicable. So, I'll have a kind of inner demon. Thus, I won't be able to face them like before. It's the same for them. Therefore, that would be a severe blow to the brotherhood between us. Chu Yang insipidly said, we'll still be together in the future. We'll still fight for the same goal. But there's one thing I'm sure of. My relationship with them will never return to how it was in the past. So, over time, it will form a kind of relationship between a superior and a subordinate. This is clearly an erasure and destruction of our brotherly feelings. I don't understand why there'll be such destruction. But I can't tolerate it. So, I'd rather die than let you do it. Chu Yang smiled faintly. I don't know what the consequences of doing this will be. But I can clearly feel from this moment that I've truly broken the heavenly Tao and rushed out of the trajectory. So, my punishment is also so severe. But I won't regret it. Because it's worth it. Chu Yang said solemnly to the sword spirit in his mind, I don't want to face them with guilt in the future. Because, to both of us, that's worse than death. When you feel guilty towards someone, you don't even dare to look into their eyes. If this kind of feeling happens between friends and brothers, just once can completely destroy years or even decades of feelings. I don't want to destroy it. What I want is to be calm and complete. The sword spirit was dumbfounded at first. Then he fell into deep thought. Finally, he lowered his head and sighed. I've never seen such a loyal and righteous tribulation sword master like you. You're actually willing to risk your life for such a feeling. Chu Yang heard something from this sentence. He asked sensitively, could it be that the previous masters of the Calamity Sword weren't people who valued friendship and righteousness? The sword spirit suddenly raised his head. He seemed to be shocked by his question. Then he lowered his head and didn't say a word. Then, his body slowly disappeared into the tribulation space. Only a sentence floated over. When you're done, the divine spirit will immediately enter the soul-quenching spring to make up for as much as you can. Chu Yang pondered. He didn't reply for a long time. After a long silence, he said slowly, is it possible that only Heartless can be the tribulation sword master? His voice echoed in the space of consciousness. But the sword spirit didn't answer. The tribulation space was silent. Chu Yang was silent for a long time. His soul body stood quietly in the tribulation space. Suddenly he sneered. He was full of sarcasm, contempt, and mockery. He said to himself, really? Ridiculous. What Chu Yang and everyone else didn't know was that when Gu Duxing and the others were in the most critical moment, when Chu Yang was using suicide to destroy 10,000 tribulations to force the sword spirit, a figure silently entered the forest like a thunderbolt. This figure was agile and fast. It was believed that he was one of the best even in the entire heavenly layer world. This figure was Duqiu, who had traveled a long way to come here. When he stopped and looked at the scene, Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing were both injured. They were spurting blood and retreating. They were on the verge of death. At that time, Duqiu was about to make a move. When he was about to rush out with a long roar, the sword spirit had already appeared. His powerful aura instantly suppressed the whole scene. Duqiu, who had already rushed out halfway, suddenly stopped. He quietly leaned on a tree and watched the changes in the scene. Since then, Duqiu wouldn't make a move because he didn't need to. But if Chu Yang didn't make a move, Duqiu would. Just as Chu Yang and the sword spirit had expected, Gu Duxing and the others wouldn't die. If Duqiu made a move and Chu Yang didn't, it would be just as Chu Yang had expected. The relationship between the brothers would become very strange in the future. But at this moment, Chu Yang finally gave up on himself and let the sword spirit make a move. When the sword spirit made a move, it was tantamount to breaking the heavenly secret that had been arranged long ago. So, Chu Yang's feeling wasn't wrong at all. At this moment, he had truly jumped out. He had jumped out of the vicious circle of the previous tribulation sword masters. But was this a good thing for Chu Yang? Or a bad thing? How could he withstand the test of the tribulation's sword when his spirit was injured? But after all, Chu Yang had used himself to take risks in exchange for the present, for a calm heart, and for a future full of crises. If this was a battle, it was also a battle between friendship, conscience, and interests. If he took a step forward, his spirit would be calm and at ease, but he would experience death and life. If he took a step back, the world would be unscathed, but the crack would remain forever and his spirit would be doomed eternally. What would you choose? Now, Yu Gongzheng was looking at Chu Yang with a somewhat incomprehensible look in his eyes. Obviously, this Minister Yu, who had a high cultivation level, was also extremely shocked by Chu Yang's performance. The sound of horse hooves thundered. The first clan to arrive was the Huyan clan. The people of the Gu clan and the Dong clan also arrived under the leadership of Dong Wulei after a while. They sucked in a mouthful of cold air when they entered the forest and saw the corpses. They had arrived a step too late. Everyone's entire body was drenched in cold sweat when they had heard their brothers and relatives talking about the danger they had just faced. They didn't know whether they were remorseful or glad. The people of these clans would have been among the corpses on the ground if they had arrived a step earlier. Moreover, they wouldn't have been few. But they had arrived a step too late and hadn't been able to catch up with this excitement. So, they were somewhat regretful. Then, everyone neatly and unanimously kept their mouths shut at the request of Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang. This was tantamount to a super gag order. Tan Tan was still sitting quietly. He didn't make the slightest movement. The golden rays of light around his body were still flickering. Everyone who saw this scene clicked their tongues in amazement. Upper three heavens, in the fifth courtyard of the Zhuge clan, Du Qingro was reading a book in front of his desk. His complexion was indifferent and calm. It was at that moment, Tan Tan had suddenly been attacked by those so-called 5 great killing weapons. If one were to describe it clearly, suddenly, a pop sound was heard. Diwu Qingrou's complexion changed. He then stood up indifferently. He opened a secret compartment on the desk, and a small purple jade bottle popped out. He saw that a pill had already broken into pieces inside the jade bottle. A kind of golden color pervaded the purple jade bottle. Diwu Qingrou's complexion changed. His eyes exposed a meaningful look as he muttered to himself, "It's done." Chapter 662. If the people in the dark forest of the three heavens were here, they would certainly be surprised to find that the golden yenba in the purple crystal jade bottle was exactly the same as the glittering yenba that was revolving around Tan Tan's body. It was almost dawn. Diwu Qingro slowly walked to the window and opened it. He breathed in the morning breeze with an indifferent expression on his face. He stood in the wind for a long time. Then he finally turned around and took the purple crystal jade bottle from the desk. He put it in his bosom and walked out. It wasn't long before Diwu Qingrou's handsome and carefree silhouette appeared outside a small hidden courtyard. This place was obviously heavily guarded to the extreme. Diwu Qingrou showed a command token. The guards silently retreated and made way for him. Diwu Qingrou walked in and showed another token. This time, a secret passage was opened. Diwu Qingrou showed a total of 4 different tokens. Then he finally arrived in front of a secret chamber. 4 old men in white were meditating in front of the secret chamber with their eyes slightly closed. One of them heard the noise and slowly opened his eyes. Suddenly, 2 beams of golden light shot out. He frowned when he saw Diwu Qingrou. He said, "Diwu clan's Qingrou? Why are you here again?" The other 3 did not say a word. They closed their eyes like clay sculptures. Qingrou came to see that person. "I need to confirm something." Diwu Qingrou bowed respectfully. "Confirm something?" that old man in white asked. "Yes." Diwu Qingrou said, "The pill that was refined according to the law has already exploded." "Oh." The 4 old men in white opened their eyes at the same time. "In other words, that thing is a success?" Diwu Qingrou took out the jade bottle and flashed it in his palm. He smiled warmly and said, "If that person's words are true, it should be a success." The 4 old men looked at the glittering purple crystal jade bottle. They could not help but look at each other. Although they tried to be calm, they could see the surprise in each other's eyes. "Go in," one of the old men in white said casually. Wu Qingrou lowered his head, and a profound look flashed through his eyes. Success and a success, are they the same? The door of the secret chamber creaked open. Diwu Qingrou waited quietly until there was enough space for one person to enter. Then he walked in calmly. The 4 white-robed old men outside all had their eyes closed. When Diwu Qingrou entered and the door closed, they all opened their eyes at the same time and looked at each other with a complicated expression. "What a pity!" The white-robed elder let out a deep sigh. "It is indeed a pity." The other 3 nodded simultaneously. Great Elder thinks highly of Diwu Qingrou. "It's not without reason." The white-robed old man said in a soft voice, "This is an elder of the 3 Stars Divine Clan." The Zhuge clan has been in high spirits ever since this news spread among the upper echelons of the clan. Even the patriarch's face was slightly red as he waited for the door to open. When he entered, he quickened his pace. Moreover, the door hasn't opened yet, and they all crowded around it. But Diwu Qingro just waited quietly. I observed him carefully. He came 3 times and his expression didn't change at all. The white-robed elder sighed. You can see the whole leopard from a single spot. You can truly judge a person by looking at the smallest details. Diwu Qingro's mental fortitude and heart, among the younger generation of the Zhuge clan, there are very few who can compare to him. That's right. It's indeed a pity. Why isn't he a member of the Zhuge clan? Another white-robed old man said softly, but fortunately, Diwu Qingro is still very loyal to the clan as a retainer. The white-robed elder's eyes flashed. He said in a deep voice, if not, how could I have allowed him to live until now? The 4 closed their eyes at the same time. Diwu Qingro entered the secret chamber. There was a long passage in front of him. This passage was glittering on all sides. It was made of hard black iron. The entire passage was like a long iron coffin. Diwu Qingro walked forward unhurriedly. After turning a corner, he finally arrived at a spacious secret chamber. The door of the secret chamber was 5 feet wide. It was glittering with bright starlight. It was made of star steel. Inside the door was a person covered in blood. His 4 limbs, including his cervical vertebrae, were abnormally bent. His head was deeply lowered, as if he was already dead. However, almost every joint on his body was penetrated by the chains made of star steel, and was firmly locked. With such tight security and such cruel chains, it was easy to imagine how important this person was to the Zhuge clan. Diwu Qingro stood in front of the door for a long time. That person didn't move at all. Diwu Qingro's eyes flashed with admiration. He gently knocked on the door of the star steel prison and said indifferently, "Third elder, have you thought it through?" The joints in that person's neck issued a kacha sound. He slowly raised his head and looked at Diwu Qingro. His eyes flashed with an eager and longing light. However, his voice was cold and cruel. Your Zhuge clan is playing with fire. You're courting death. Diwu Qingro wasn't angry. He said indifferently, "Third elder, our Zhuge clan is one of the ruling clans of the heavenly layer. Moreover, our Zhuge clan's intelligence and martial arts are second to none. The cooperation between the divine clan and us is mutually beneficial. I don't understand why Third Elder is so persistent." The Third Elder snorted and said weakly, "Our 3 stars divine clan would rather be the slave of a dragon than be friends with a dog. You have ambition." Diwu Qingro's eyes flashed with admiration. He said, "It's a pity that your divine clan has no hope now. Your hope has been extinguished." The Third Elder's entire body shook. His eyes suddenly flashed. The sun mark on his forehead was also shining. This was clearly the sign of an extremely excited god. However, he still shouted in anger, "You? What have you done?" Diwu Qingro chuckled and said, "Let's ask Third Elder to know. Then you can give up and be at ease. I've already accomplished that matter." His words were still extremely gentle and warm. There was no change from before. It was still the same as before, and it was still the same as before. However, the Third Elder suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed as if he had put down something in his heart. Then he lowered his head. His entire body was slightly trembling. He could tell that Diwu Qingro was trying to make him give up. However, he was the only one who could understand the other meaning behind his words. You can give up and be at ease. That is, you can be at ease. I've already accomplished that matter. It's not, we've already accomplished this matter. There was one less we. The Third Elder's body was curled up on the ground. He was trembling violently. The few strands of firewood on the ground were also rustling. His breathing was heavy like a bellows. If someone else had seen this, they would have thought that he was trembling in anger and sighing in despair. However, only Diwu Qingro knew that the Third Elder was actually moved. Pleasantly surprised. "What proof do you have?" The Third Elder suddenly prostrated himself on the ground and shouted in a hoarse voice, "What proof do you have to prove this sentence?" "Proof?" Diwu Qingro said casually, "I naturally have proof. However, Chuan, third elder, what will you give us in exchange for this proof? The third elder gasped for breath and said, if you can produce proof, this old man will have nothing to say. Diwu Qingro smiled and said, you only have nothing to say. You still need to give an explanation to our Zhuge clan. The third elder took a deep breath and said, you can rest assured. As long as you have proof, I'll give you an explanation. Diwu Qingro smiled and said, if that's the case. Little elder spoke with a drawn-out voice. It seemed as if he was trying to sell him off. However, it also seemed as if he was waiting for something. A white-robed old man who was sitting cross-legged in a distant place on the upper floor finally smiled with satisfaction. In front of him was a red-cloud steel pipe that was as thin as a strand of hair. The conversation between the two people below could be heard clearly from this pipe. Then he flicked his finger, and a gust of wind rose outside. The white-robed old man's body gently floated up like a cloud. He sat cross-legged like this. Then he floated out like floating clouds and flowing water. His figure disappeared in a flash. He felt relieved. Diwu Qingro and the third elder's words weren't out of the ordinary. They were fighting for the Zhuge clan's interests. Moreover, they were squeezing the enemy's bottom line. He also believed that the overall situation had already been decided since the matter had reached this point. Even if the third elder didn't cooperate, he and the others could have used the awakened one of the 3 days to lay a trap and lure the other people here. The 3 Stars Divine clan would have been divided if that had happened. And there would have been someone who would have cooperated with the Zhuge clan. It would have been enough as long as there was someone, even if it was only a little. That red cloud steel pipe suddenly shrank into the ground after he had flown out. And there wasn't even a trace of it left behind. Diwu Qingro was still waiting in the barbarian room. Suddenly, there were 3 gentle knocks on the outside. Then there was no sound. Diwu Qingro gently smiled. He paced around and said, third elder, look at my hand. What's this? He flipped his hand as he said this, and a purple jade bottle appeared. The moment he took it out, the gold-like liquid inside started to emit a bright light in this gloomy prison. It illuminated this secret room which was made of all kinds of strange metals. And it looked splendid. The third elder suddenly raised his head. He looked at the golden light in a daze. Then, 2 drops of tears slowly flowed down from his eyes. He stared blankly for a long time. Then, he suddenly burst into tears in a hoarse voice. Diwu Qingro looked at him calmly. He didn't say a word. But there was deep understanding in his eyes. After a long time, Diwu Qingro softly said, third elder, don't forget your promise. Then he turned around and slowly walked out. When he reached the door, he looked back and said, we'll meet again someday. The third elder was sitting facing the wall. Hearing this, he quietly replied, it's a promise. After the foreign gathering, my schedule will be arranged. I won't be going home for the time being. A friend introduced me to a very famous old doctor. It is said that he has treated many of the local leaders. And it's very effective. I'll go and treat him. I heard that after the treatment, he needs to lie down for 1.5 to 2 days. He can't move his waist. So, I'll try my best to finish the 2 days' worth of manuscripts. If I don't update by then, I'll call the deputy moderator and ask him to help me ask for leave in the book review section. And I'll be back home after the 22nd. I'll tell you in advance. Before this, other than the Spring Festival, I had never updated like this. I'm not feeling good about this. I only hope to recover as soon as possible. Even the gods will not remove the root of this illness. I only hope to be able to relax a little so that I can make more money for everyone. Of course, it's also for myself. I hope all of you can understand me. No one will reject money. An extra chapter is an extra chapter's worth of money. Especially for me. I've been poor before. Ife, other than that, Feng Yu looks at the monthly votes, recommendation votes, and ratings. He wants to cry but has no tears. No matter what the reason is, the truth is that I don't update much. So, I won't force it. I only hope all of you can support me when I update more. I used to be a reader, and I understand all of you. I just hope all of you can understand me, even if it's just a little. Maybe I will do it. When all of you finish reading this book, you will see the real me, including my temperament. I hope all of you can be my friends. Chapter 663. The four white-robed old men closed their eyes and remained motionless as Diwu Qingro walked out. However, Diwu Qingro smiled and bowed. He then said, "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." The four men didn't speak. Then, Diwu Qingro walked out and disappeared through the door. After he walked out, the four of them opened their eyes at the same time and looked at each other. The white-robed man said softly, "This person can be used. Unfortunately, his surname isn't Zhuge." The four men closed their eyes again. Diwu Qingro's sleeves fluttered as he walked out. The sky was already slightly bright. Diwu Qingro strolled on the road. He looked up at the remnant stars in the sky. He then looked in the direction of the rising sun. He smiled and said in a low voice, "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Then, he quickened his pace and returned to his small courtyard. He sat in the study room and let out a long sigh. He took a few breaths and felt that his mood had completely calmed down. Then he slowly walked to the front of a big map that was hanging on the wall. He frowned and stared at it for a long time. Then he gently pointed at Zhuge clan's position on the map and drew the shape of a saber in the air. He smiled slightly. Zhuge clan's shape on the map was like a small gourd. Diwu Qingro's saber had chopped the neck of this gourd. If this gourd was a person, then it would have been like a steel saber hanging on its neck. It was a fatal threat. Then, Diwu Qingro frowned and pondered. He silently calculated in his heart. He had taken advantage of the 3 Stars Divine Clan's rise, and the entire Zhuge clan had dispatched troops to deal with it. Then he had secretly contacted the higher-ups of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. His original intention had been to borrow their power. But he hadn't thought that the other party's condition would be like this. He had set up a trap. He had dispatched the higher-ups of the Zhuge clan to capture the 3rd elder of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. He had willingly stepped into the trap. Then he had set up a big plan. He had pushed Zhuge Changfeng, the one he didn't like the most, to his death. And he had fulfilled this agreement in passing. First, he had gained an extra arm. Second, it was tantamount to setting up an extremely powerful opponent for the Zhuge clan. Diwu Qingro couldn't help but smile as he thought about it. As such, when the time was right, how could the Zhuge family not be destroyed? The Zhuge clan will be annihilated. So, there will be no more intelligent clans in the upper 3 heavens. Then, who else can take on this great responsibility besides my Diwu clan? In this way, it could be considered as avenging the hatred of the Diwu clan for the past tens of thousands of years, and taking advantage of the situation to rise up. Diwu Qingro sighed as he thought of this. As he thought of the suffering that the Saint race's 3rd elder had suffered during this period of time, he took a deep breath. Although he admired the Saint race's 3rd elder, he was also filled with dread. As an 8th grade martial saint, who would be willing to bear the shame of being captured? If he wasn't willing, even if he was besieged by 2 supreme martial artists, even if he couldn't escape, he could still easily commit suicide. How could he be captured? Not to mention, after they were captured, they had to suffer such cruel torture. Moreover, he had to give people the impression that he would only confess when he couldn't hold on any longer, in order to numb them. It could be said that this 3rd elder had sacrificed everything he had, including his dignity. And all of this was just to send something that was suitable for awakening, so loyal and devoted, so willing to sacrifice, all for the sake of a slim hope. What kind of mentality was this? If there came a day when he had to fight against such an enemy, Diwu Qingro sighed. He couldn't help but be a little curious. What kind of person was that awakened? Zhuge clan had seriously offended that awakened one this time. The consequences should be. Diwu Qingro smiled as he thought of this. He thought, this world is really chaotic. The storm of Tribulation Swordmaster is just beginning, and another awakened one of the Saint race has appeared. A storm is coming. It was a pity that Diwu Qingro didn't know that the Zhuge clan hadn't offended an awakened one this time. Instead, it was an awakened demon king. What he didn't expect was that the Zhuge clan had not only offended the demon king, but also the 3 Stars Divine Clan. Moreover, they had seriously offended the Tribulation Sword Master. If Diwu Qingro had known about this, He would have been drunk even if his willpower was high. Looking at the sky gradually brightening, Diwu Qingrou's expression became deep. A feeling of loneliness arose spontaneously. He couldn't help but sigh softly, "It's really lonely." In an instant he missed King of Hell Chu. Diwu Qingrou had never tasted defeat in his life. Iron Cloud might have won the lower three heavens imperial power struggle if he hadn't done such a favor in the end. Moreover, he had increased the blood-colored destiny of the Diwu clan. Iron Cloud might have won if he had gone all out. But it would have been a Pyrrhic victory after both sides had suffered losses. Moreover, Diwu Qingrou would have had a higher chance of winning. The reason why he had given up was because of a big gamble. He had gambled on an illusory and baseless guess that he hadn't dared to confirm. Chuyang, could he be that mysterious? But one thing was certain. In Diwu Qingrou's life, there was only one person who could match him in terms of wisdom. Moreover, there was only one person who could make Diwu Qingrou suffer losses. It was King of Hell Chu. Diwu Qingrou especially missed the feeling of meeting a worthy opponent. Although his status in the Zhuge clan wasn't high, he was invincible when it came to schemes. Everything was going too smoothly. It was going so smoothly that Diwu Qingrou didn't feel the slightest bit of joy or pleasure from a successful scheme. Even if he wanted to cheat someone, he would have to cheat someone with brains to be happy. Cheating a fool would only make him depressed. Diwu Qingrou looked out of the window and muttered, "King of Hell Chu, you're about to come to the upper three heavens, right? If you? Then we'll have some fun. Let's have some fun and overturn this entire heavenly layer." The sun rose, and Diwu Qingrou's figure was drawn in the study room. It was refracted on the wall and bent. Chu Yang had already stood up while Diwu Qingrou was talking about him. He was still swaying, but he wasn't in any big trouble. His physical strength was gradually recovering. The golden halo on Tan Tan's body was still flickering. It didn't weaken in the slightest. Chu Yang tried to extend a branch into the halo. The result was that it was still highly toxic. The branch was corroded into smoke and dissipated. Chu Yang gradually became puzzled. Why would the Zhuge clan come up with such a strange poison if they're deliberately trying to deal with Tan Tan? This doesn't make any sense. This poison has lasted for a night. And it looks like it will continue for a while. It's hard to say how many days it will last. How can the Zhuge clan take Tan Tan away even if they succeed? Will they keep waiting like this? This is completely incomprehensible. Moreover, why would he need so many experts to deal with Tan Tan with his usual strength? The Zhuge clan has done something very strange this time. Chu Yang thought for a long time, but he still couldn't figure it out. Chu Yang couldn't leave since Tan Tan was here. However, this place was indeed disgusting. Therefore, Chu Yang persuaded the people of the big clans to move to another place and set up camp a dozen miles away. However, his brothers stayed behind. Unexpectedly, when Huyen Aobo saw that GMO had decided to stay, this woman also decided to stay. This made the other brothers very envious. GMO had a feeling of complacency, as if he was singing along with his wife. Therefore, he often held Huyen Aobo's arm like a little bird and showed off his affection in front of his brothers. Forgive me for using a modern analogy. It's like Pan Changjiang holding a female basketball player's arm after losing 50 kilograms of weight. Moreover, she's a foreigner, and both of them are natural and unrestrained. Luokadi was still envious at first, but he rolled his eyes on the spot after seeing this scene. Then he lay down on the ground and covered his eyes. He didn't want to get up no matter what. He kept muttering, "Hurt my eyes, hurt my eyes." In the end, he successfully made GMO and Huyen Aobo join hands to beat him up ruthlessly. Chu Yang hurriedly collected the medicines that everyone had brought with them during this time. He gathered the medicinal ingredients that he lacked and refined an incomplete version of the heavy pill. Then he gave it to Xie Danfeng to take. Otherwise, this infatuated girl wouldn't have been able to hold on before Tan Tan woke up. Of course, his brothers were most worried about Chu Yang. Chu Yang could only comfort them with a smile. "I'm fine. I just need to rest. Then, I'll return to normal." Some things need to be said after doing them. But some things can only be done. But some things can't be said. If my brothers know that I'm risking my life for them, I'm afraid they'll go crazy. No matter what the result is this time, I'll bear it alone. It'll be good if I can survive. But if I can't, then why should I increase the demons in my brothers' hearts? The halo on Tantan's body slowly faded after 3 days. His flamboyant long hair began to flutter again. Even Chu Yang, Diwu Qingro, and those people from the Zhuge clan didn't know that the effect of the so-called 5 great killing weapons would definitely last for 3 days. And no one could get close during these 3 days, including the supreme-level experts. Moreover, the Devil King would be able to regain his consciousness after 3 days. Then, the Devil King would be able to erupt with absolute strength when the halo dissipated. How could the 3 Stars Divine Clan have racked their brains to come up with such a method and put it into practice if they didn't have this assurance? One must know that even if these people from the Zhuge clan were to touch the king's finger at that time, it would be an indelible disgrace for the entire clan. Not to mention that the king would be captured. Therefore, the people sent by the Zhuge clan would undoubtedly die as long as they carried out this plan. This was a truly suicidal plan. Zhuge Changfeng's realization before his death wasn't wrong. But it was a pity that the people of the Zhuge clan had already died. And the one guarding the Devil King was the master of Tribulation Sword. And this invisible pressure had been transferred to Chu Yang's body. And Minister Chu didn't know anything about this matter at the moment. Eventually, the halo completely disappeared. Tan sat quietly. Then, his long hair suddenly fluttered. He opened his eyes and shot out a pitch-black gaze that was almost as bright as the sun's rays. He saw Chu Yang as soon as he opened his eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he exposed a strange and gloomy smile. Then he coldly said, "Good sword." Chapter 664. What a good sword? Chu Yang was startled. His eyes suddenly became sharp. He calmly looked at Tan and slowly asked, "Who are you?" Chu Yang immediately realized that Tan was acting strangely from these words. After all, Tan would never talk to him like this. Such a tone, such an appearance, the meaning of a good sword is... The corners of Tan's mouth curled into a strange smile. He was about to continue speaking when he suddenly wrinkled his brows. The wrinkles on his brows became tighter and tighter. It seemed as if he was in pain. One must know that Tan had awakened the consciousness of a Devil King. So, it could make such a person feel pain. It could be seen how intense this pain was. "My consciousness has split." Tan frowned and insipidly said, "The consciousness of this life is so strong." "Wait a moment. Let me read it." Chu Yang was startled. He didn't give Tan any time to ask, "You read it? Will Tan disappear because of this?" Tan frowned and looked at Chu Yang. "Do you care so much?" Chu Yang snorted and said in an overbearing manner, "Answer my question." Tan became furious. His eyebrows slowly raised. He softly said, "You dare to talk to me like this?" His voice was soft, but it was full of danger. However, he let out a muffled snort after he finished speaking. It was clear that the two consciousnesses were fighting for control of the body and consciousness. He hadn't encountered any resistance from Tan during his last awakening. Perhaps, Tan had wanted to kill all the people of the Ao clan. However, he had to face Chu Yang this time. And this was tantamount to touching Tan's bottom line. Perhaps it could be said that there weren't many people who could hold weight in Tan's heart. However, Chu Yang and Meng Chaoran were the two most important people in his heart. And Xie Danfeng was added to that list now. However, there was no doubt that Chu Yang had taken care of him since he was a child. He had grown up with him and learned martial arts together. So, their friendship was the deepest. Tan had developed from dependence to respect to Chu Yang. Then, it had developed to worship him. And it wasn't without reason. Now, this consciousness had awakened, and was obviously full of hostility towards Chu Yang. So, how could Tan allow it? Therefore, it was Tan's fiercest resistance at this moment. Tan's consciousness was going all out and exploding. It was fighting, resisting, and struggling. This kind of pain that came from the deepest part of the soul was unbearable even for a demon king. Because he couldn't kill him. Killing him was equivalent to killing himself. Tan Tan deeply wrinkled his brows. He maintained an indifferent look on his face. However, beads of sweat were continuously seeping out of his hair and dripping down. After a long time, he controlled himself and said, "I won't kill him." After a while, he gradually calmed down. Chu Yang had been waiting patiently. When he saw this situation, he couldn't help but be shocked. A warm current surged up. He recalled that Tan Tan had said to him some time ago, "Please kill me if I can't control myself anymore." She couldn't help but feel warm at his words. Tan Tan had already anticipated such a situation. Moreover, he had already made a request to himself. However, his subconscious was still protecting himself even though he couldn't control his body on this day. Moreover, he was using a desperate method. "I want to have a talk with you," Chu Yang said softly, but firmly. "Talk to me?" Tan Tan looked at Chu Yang with his demonic black eyes. The corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile as he said, "I don't think there's anything to talk about with you." Chu Yang firmly looked at him and said, "But I think there is." A conversation between a king and his sword? It's very strange. Tan Tan pondered for a moment. Then he suddenly sneered. It seemed as if he was silently laughing at himself. He then said, "All right, I will talk to you." Xie Danfeng looked at him somewhat apprehensively. There was some hesitation, some fear, and some longing in her eyes. However, she didn't say anything in the end. She just stared at him. She stubbornly pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Tan Tan turned around and looked at her. He wanted to reprimand her for no reason. However, his heart inexplicably softened when he saw Xie Danfeng's pitiful appearance. He sighed and said in a soft voice, "Wait for me here for a while." He felt conflicted in his heart as soon as he said these words. He even regretted it. When then did I ever speak in such a soft voice? How many tens of thousands of years has it been? I remember the last time I spoke in such a soft voice to a woman. Who was it? The queen of the divine clan. I vaguely feel that she looks somewhat similar to Xie Danfeng. I remember that she would silently look at me every time I would go out to kill someone. She wouldn't say anything, and would quietly wait for me to return. I would always feel that she would heave a sigh of relief every time I return. She wouldn't say anything. As his authority grew, the words she could speak to him became less and less, and she became more and more cautious. However, even though he had never said it out loud for so many years, she was the only one he liked. I always wanted to make it up to her. But I never had the opportunity to do so. So I could only bury it in my heart. The 3 Stars Divine Clan is in imminent danger. I, the king, am also treading on thin ice. I have to practice martial arts day and night. And I have to fight day and night. I finally feel that there's no one in the universe who can match me. And I want to give her the promise that I've made in my heart. But there's an unreasonable madman who folds the entire sky. That folding doesn't just bury hundreds of millions of creatures. It also buries my clansman and my lover. I finally awaken after 10,000 years. But where's that person from back then? The woman whom I owe my entire life. Where are you now? No matter where you go, no matter where you go, no matter where you reincarnate, are you safe and sound? He couldn't help but become somewhat infatuated as he thought of this. He pondered over and over again. And it seemed that his heart had also softened along with these gentle words. Xie Danfeng's mouth trembled a bit when she heard these gentle words. She said, "Are you Tan Tan?" Tan Tan stared blankly. He wanted to say, "I'm not." However, his heart trembled. So, he said in a low and deep voice, "I think you should be." He felt somewhat regretful after he said this. Why am I so soft-hearted now? Xie Danfeng choked with sobs. She covered her eyes and squatted on the ground. I only want my Tan Tan. That Tan Tan, who protected me at the critical moment of life and death. Tan Tan stared blankly for a long while. Then he finally sighed and said to Chu Yang, "Come with me." Chu Yang saw that Dong Wuxiang and Gu Duxing were looking at him worriedly. So, he comforted them and said, "Don't worry." He thought for a while and said, "It's been 3 days. Mo Tianji of the Mo clan hasn't arrived yet. You guys should pay attention. Don't miss him." His voice hadn't even faded when he felt that his body had already soared into the sky. Tan Tan grabbed Chu Yang. His wide black robe fluttered in the wind. He flew into the sky like a huge black bat. Then he disappeared with a schwa sound. Chu Yang only heard the sound of the wind. The trees on both sides of his eyes suddenly disappeared without a trace. Then, his body continued to rise. The ground under his feet became more and more distant. He couldn't open his eyes because of the gale that was blowing against his face. Chu Yang opened his eyes when the sound of the wind subsided. He found that he had already reached the peak of the nearest mountain. He was at least 200 miles away from that forest. Tan Tan had carried Chu Yang and flown such a long distance in just a blink of an eye. This speed was simply unimaginable. Chu Yang lowered his head. He found that the hem of his black robe was emitting a wisp of green smoke due to the intense friction with the air. There was a faint smell of burnt hair inside. This smell made Chu Yang's heart ache. Chu Yang couldn't help but think of Wu Qianqian's long black hair that had been sewn inside. And those beautiful words, "Chu Yang, Qianqian likes you." He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. That infatuated girl. When Chu Yang had discovered those words, he had thought of discarding all of his black robes and not wearing them. But he hadn't been able to harden his heart in the end. This was perhaps the last sustenance of Wu Qianqian's maiden heart. Could it be that he had to be so cruel to destroy it? Tan Tan's voice came. Chu Yang's heart shook. He raised his head. "I like to talk about things at the highest place." Tan Tan clasped his hands behind his back. He stood tall in the wind. His long black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes slightly narrowed as he insipidly said, "This makes me feel like I'm at a high place. I feel like I'm calmly watching the world's winds and clouds beneath my feet." Chu Yang slowly walked behind him. Then he insipidly said, "You're not the only one who likes this feeling. But some people stand here for the natural scenery of the world. Some people stand here for the scenery of their hearts. And some people stand here for the scenery of their hearts. And some people stand here to reach out and touch the world's winds and clouds." He smiled and asked, "Which one are you?" Tan Tan's face didn't have the slightest expression. He replied, "I'm neither." Chu Yang mischievously smiled and said, "I prefer to stand at the highest place. I'm similar to you in this regard. But I'm different from you. You stand here to enjoy the loneliness and desolation of being at a high place. But I don't want to be lonely when I stand here. I want my brother to stand here with me." He calmly said, "Tan Tan is my junior martial brother. He's my brother. The two of us grew up together. We share the same mother." Tan Tan's gaze looked at the boundless sea of clouds in front of him. His gaze was far away. It seemed as if he hadn't heard Chu Yang's words. But it also seemed as if he had heard Chu Yang's words. And he was deliberately ignoring them. Chu Yang continued, "I think you should understand what I mean." Tan Tan uttered, "Oh?" He glanced at Chu Yang from the corner of his eyes. "This isn't your body." Chu Yang said, "Today, I only want to ask you on behalf of Tan Tan. How can you give up this body? Tell me your conditions." "This isn't my body?" Tan Tan pondered. He pondered for a long time. Then he laughed involuntarily and said, "You're wrong. This is my body." The divine chi-gathering fish was on his body. It seemed as if it had gone crazy at this moment. The pure energy of the entire world was unceasingly converging towards him. And a storm of spirit energy was formed in the sky in an instant. The entire mountaintop was suddenly curled up in smoke. And it was completely obscured. It seemed as if the entire mountain was covered in smoke. Chapter 665. Chu Yang sneered, "Your body? Have you ever eaten a mouthful of rice for the growth of this body? Have you ever drunk a mouthful of water? Have you ever been bullied? Or have you ever died for him? Your body? What makes you say that this is your body?" He stared intently at the present Tan Tan and said, "Do you know what this body has endured? Do you know how much torture this body has to endure to grow to this point? Now, it has finally grown up with great difficulty. But, you suddenly appear and say that this is your body? Chu Yang laughed out loud. What kind of thing are you? Tan Tan's face sank. It looked like a black cloud. The entire sky seemed to have turned gloomy along with his face. The black clouds almost pressed down to the ground. He was clearly close to exploding. His eyes were deep, and his brows were knitted tightly. A long while passed. Then he suddenly exhaled and softly said, I want to kill you. Chu Yang faintly smiled. There are many people in this world who want to kill me. And there are many people who have the ability to kill me and also want to kill me. But I'm still alive and well. Tan Tan's brows relaxed. He chuckled, You and I will fight sooner or later. But killing you now would be an unfair victory. I won't feel any pleasure. Chu Yang indifferently said, That's your business. It has nothing to do with me. So, it's impossible if you want to curry favor with me. Tan Tan angrily snorted. But he smiled and said, You don't know how to appreciate favors. He took a step forward. His entire body was already standing in the sea of clouds in the void. He stood in the air with his hands clasped behind his back. Then he insipidly said, I'll wake up for about 3 days this time. After that, this body will still be handed over to him to control. He needs to continue to work hard and improve if he wants to fully awaken. I also don't know what it will be like when I fully awaken in the future. And my strength will return to its peak. Tan Tan paused as he spoke till here. Chu Yang clearly understood and nodded. He knew the meaning of these words. What was important was one's consciousness and not one's strength. In other words, this demon king did not know whether he would be the master of the good side or the evil side when he fully awakened. Therefore, I can't make any promises now, Tan Tan said. Previously, you said that this isn't my body. Big mistake. Tan Tan faintly smiled and said, Do you know who I am? Who are you? Chu Yang suddenly felt his heartbeat quicken. Puma, pa. Tan Tan shook his head and couldn't help but laugh. His movements were natural and at ease. However, they also carried a faint sense of disappointment and frustration. I was born on this continent 100,000 years ago. 140,000 years ago, the Saint King perished, and the Saint race underwent a great change, falling apart. I was elected as the Lord of the Star race, and began to recover the 3 stars. 100,000 years ago, I unified the divine race, and I was the king of the 3 stars divine race. 18,000 years ago, I unified the 2 races of birds and beasts, and silently defeated the army of birds and beasts, becoming the king of the 2 races. 15,000 years ago, I fought fiercely with the devil race. After 2,000 years of struggle, I became the master of the devil race. Other than the Phoenix clan, the Elf clan, the Human clan, and a few other mysterious clans, I am the ruler of the heavens. I am the true overlord of the heavens in terms of power and strength. Wherever the royal flag goes, even if it's held by a weak soldier, it can still make a supreme martial artist retreat. I can kill millions of zombies in an instant with one order. I am unrivaled in the entire world. No one dares to disobey my orders. Tan Tan's voice was very dull. However, it naturally carried a murderous aura. An extremely overbearing, imposing aura was also densely emitted. Chu Yang's mind was shaken. He had never thought that Tan Tan's body would contain such a powerful soul. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the master of the world with such a status. It was also at that time that the humans became aware of the threat. They began to fight with me unceasingly. The experts of the human race emerged one after another. It was impossible to guard against their crafty plots and machinations. After 5,000 years of war, the humans became slightly more submissive. Tan Tan chuckled. However, there was a bit of bitterness in his smile. That person appeared at the moment when I was about to unify the heavens. That person? Chu Yang's mind was suddenly shaken. He pricked up his ears. That person? That person was the one who created the Calamity Sword. He was the one who folded the heavens. Such a huge continent was folded by him like a piece of paper. First, It was folded into 2 layers. Then, it was folded into 3 layers. That person's strength couldn't be described with words. That man. Tan Tan's eyes had deep hatred, deep worship, and a faint fear in them. That man does as he pleases. In fact, it's already indescribable. That man's lawlessness is even more innumerable. That man's cruelty and cold-bloodedness is absolutely the first in history. Chu Yang agreed and nodded. Tens of billions of creatures were wiped out from this world with a flip of his hand. How could cold-bloodedness be enough to describe this kind of behavior? When that person appeared, the heavens fell and the earth cracked. Tan Tan's body unconsciously swayed. He wrinkled his brows and exposed a deep pain in his heart. All the clans have disappeared without a trace. None of my subordinates survived. My brothers were completely annihilated. My women were also. He chuckled a couple of times, but it was a rather miserable laugh. When he folded the heavens for the first time, I knew that I couldn't do it. I was powerless to resist. So, I could only endure. Moreover, I tried my best to cooperate with him in order to protect my people. I had never thought that this bastard would treat such a big matter that involved the entire world as a child's play. And it led to the collapse of the heavens after it was folded. This kind of thing, what kind of thing is this? When it collapsed, that kind of situation was really unforgettable for a lifetime. Tan Tan's voice became low and hoarse. He mischievously laughed. I was sitting on top of the world a moment ago. And I became a loner the next moment. Millions of my subordinates turned into yellow soil in front of me. Even their corpses couldn't be found. Billions of my people turned into clouds and smoke. Moreover, I was on the verge of death. The heavens fell and the earth cracked. Tan Tan clasped his hands behind his back. His long hair fluttered in the wind. He blushed and said, I looked on helplessly as everyone died in front of me. And I was their king. I was their pillar. I was the person they had pledged their loyalty to even if they had to suffer untold hardships in their lives. But I couldn't do anything. I could flatten a sea with one palm. And I could crush a mountain with one kick. But I couldn't even save a strand of their hair at that time. I only heard the words they said before they died. And there was only one sentence, King, please go. Our deaths were worth it as long as you were alive. Since then, I never called myself king because I didn't deserve it. I only called myself me. Tan Tan burst into laughter as he spoke until here. This is a blood feud of billions of lives. Chu Yang, master of Calamity Sword, tell me, should I take revenge? Chu Yang's gaze condensed. He insipidly said, anyone would want to take revenge. You too? Tan Tan suddenly turned his head and looked at Chu Yang. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Chu Yang replied without hesitation. Good. Tan Tan looked up to the sky and laughed. But he laughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. You're worthy of being the master of Calamity Sword who awakened me. Then he diverted the topic of revenge. He continued to talk about the previous great calamity of the world. At that time, I was injured by the world. And I was already on the verge of death. But I held on to my last breath. I didn't want to die no matter what. I wanted to know who that bastard was even if I had to die. I was the Demon Lord. So, how could I die without knowing why? Tan Tan fiercely said. I watched with my own eyes as he created the Calamity Sword and turned the entire continent into 3 heavens. He threw down all the treasures to support the entire continent. Then I watched as he floated away. But he never mentioned his name from the beginning to the end. I couldn't bear it any longer as I was about to leave this world. At that time, I exploded the last bit of my blood essence. I jumped out of the ruins and shouted, Who are you? Tell me your name. Tan Tan's voice was hoarse as he said these words. His eyes were filled with hatred. It seemed as if he had returned to that moment. He had used his last bit of vitality to ask for the name of his greatest enemy. That kind of resentment. These words were filled with grief, indignation, powerlessness, despair, and resentment. Chu Yang still felt a burst of gloominess when he heard them. Tan Tan hurriedly took 2 breaths after he finished speaking. Then he continued to talk. That man suddenly stopped when I shouted those words. He turned his head around in the sky. He looked at me from thousands of miles away. Then he suddenly smiled and asked me, "Do you want to take revenge?" At that time I said, "Nonsense. Would you take revenge if it were you?" Tan Tan said, "I only killed people in my life. I never scolded people. That was the first time I scolded someone in my tens of thousands of years of life." That man smiled and said, "Since you want to take revenge, I'll give you an opportunity to do so. Unfortunately, you may not get what you wish for." He disappeared after he finished speaking those words. Then, I felt that the collapsed energy and blood in my body had started to condense. It wasn't much, but it was enough to turn my body into a spirit seed. Then, it disappeared in the spirit energy of the world. Then, it quietly waited for the next awakening. This was a mysterious technique passed down by the devil ancestor of the devil race. No one had ever practiced it. But I was seriously injured at that time. But I practiced it for the first time, and succeeded. Then I lost all consciousness. I wandered in the spirit energy of the world. I waited until I grew stronger for a while. Then I dived into the ground, and absorbed the spirit energy of the earth. Then I broke out of the ground 10,000 years later, and became a newborn baby. But I received the blessings of the world the moment I became a baby. And I gave birth to another consciousness. That is Tan Tan, your junior martial brother. Tan Tan turned his head and looked at Chu Yang. He smiled with mixed feelings and said, "Do you understand now? You said that this body wasn't mine. Now, you know that your junior martial brother is the real outsider. He has occupied my body. I haven't eaten a mouthful of rice or drank a mouthful of water for this body. But I have worked hard for this body for 100,000 years." Chapter 666. Chu Yang muttered to himself for a long time. He suddenly felt speechless. What else could Chu Yang say in the face of such a demon king whose cultivation was thousands of times higher than his own and whose experience was thousands of times more miserable than his own? He had originally thought that his own experience was tragic enough. However, his own experience had a taste of reaping what he had sown. He hadn't expected that this legendary devil king would turn out to be like this. It was an undeserved disaster. Moreover, his entire race had disappeared. Moreover, it had disappeared in an inexplicable manner. Chu Yang had been reborn. However, this guy had been sullen for 100,000 years before he had the opportunity to rise up. Moreover, his spirit seed had been occupied by a newborn soul. Chu Yang forced a smile after a long while. "Your experience really makes me speechless. It's so tragic that I can't even sympathize with you." Tan Tan mischievously smiled. "I'm not complaining about anything. You may think that it's tragic. But I only think that my skills are inferior." He ruthlessly laughed out loud. Then he shouted, "My skills are inferior. So, it serves me right." Chu Yang was speechless. These words were equally irrefutable. But they couldn't agree with him either. So, he remained speechless. Chu Yang said after a long while, "This is your style. Perhaps you would have been defeated by your own hands even if there hadn't been such a person." But Tan Tan raised his eyebrows. "Because you don't leave a way out for others. You block the way for others to react in advance even if you say a word. So, they can only listen to you. They won't have the opportunity to express their own opinions. To some extent, this is anticipating the enemy's moves. But it's unconsciously creating a deadlock in some matters." Chu Yang faintly smiled. Chu Yang could clearly analyze this from Tan Tan's words. This guy didn't leave the slightest room for others to react or talk in every word he said. The others could only sigh and remain silent after listening to his words. They simply didn't know how to reply. Chu Yang had experienced 2 lives, but this was the first time that he had seen such a person. This wasn't overbearing. It was bigotry. Chu Yang had thought that Tan Tan wouldn't care about these words of his. In fact, he might even get angry. But he hadn't expected that Tan Tan would ponder deeply for a while. Then he nodded and said, "You're right." He smiled and said, My personality is like this. I don't leave any leeway for others. However, if I leave leeway for others for everything, would I still be me? Chu Yang could not help but smile. This sentence still made people feel strange, and there was no room for them to interrupt the conversation. Now, it's time to talk about the grievances between us. The faint smile on Tan Tan's face vanished and was replaced by loneliness and desolation. The grievances between us. Chu Yang nodded. Yes, there are grievances between us. No matter what you say, no matter how much time you have spent on this body belongs to my brother. He is the one favored by the heavens and earth. I believe you will not deny this. Tan Tan waved his hand. This body will be his in the future. His current strength is far from enough for me to fully awaken and occupy this body. What are you afraid of? Moreover, he has started to read my memories after receiving the 5 poisons reincarnation smoke. And he is slowly recovering. This would be of great benefit to the growth of his strength. What are you dissatisfied with? Chu Yang was silent. He then said, Then, when will you be fully awakened? Tan Tan was silent for a moment. Then he said, Perhaps I will have to wait until he becomes a saint-level expert, or above. Supreme-level expert? Chu Yang blurted out. Perhaps. A trace of bitterness appeared at the corners of Tan Tan's mouth. Only when he can withstand the full impact of my divine soul imprint will the two souls completely fuse and become one. At that time, he will have the memories of 2 lives. He won't erase me. And I won't erase him either. Tan Tan said in a rare solemn voice, You don't need to worry about him. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief and said, So, that's how it is. He was still somewhat skeptical in his heart. However, he could only believe it for the time being. That was because Chu Yang didn't know how to deal with such a situation. But he had finally put down his worries about Tan Tan's safety for the time being. As for you and me, Tan Tan said, You must know that the calamity sword in your dantian was personally created by the person who had destroyed me back then. And your so-called mission as the master of the calamity sword is actually a mission given to you by that person. In other words, you are the successor of that person who had destroyed me back then. Tan Tan coldly smiled and said, So, you and I are enemies. We will fight sooner or later. There is no doubt about this. Chu Yang forced a smile. Do you think these words of yours are fair? You have occupied my brother's body, and you want to fight with me? How can I injure his body with real swords and spears? And a moment of hesitation is enough to shatter a body countless times in a fight between experts. So, you want to fight with me? So, I will give you time. I will give you enough time to grow. Tan Tan said, In fact, I have come to talk with you this time. But I don't want to make an agreement with you to fight after hundreds or thousands of years. Instead, I want to remind you of one thing. Don't let my 100,000 years of waiting turn into flowing water. 100,000 years of waiting turn into flowing water? Chu Yang was stunned. For 100,000 years, the belief that has supported me is revenge. A black flame ignited in Tan Tan's eyes. It seemed as if it wanted to burn his soul to ashes. I will never allow that person's successor to live in this world. You can live before I fully awaken. But I won't allow the master of the calamity sword to exist in this world after I fully awaken. Tan Tan laughed out loud. I'm telling you this now. I'm not afraid that you will destroy this body before I fully awaken. He paused for a moment and then said, I will eventually become irreconcilable with you. But I'm very relieved. Chu Yang forced a smile. Destroy this body before I fully awaken? What kind of joke is this? Wouldn't that be equivalent to me destroying Tan Tan and my master Meng Chao Ran? How can I do that? Don't worry. The future is still very far away. You and I will fight when that time comes. And I won't necessarily lose to you. Chu Yang faintly smiled and said, But I hope that you can withstand that kind of blow if I defeat you right after you fully awaken. After all, you will have to endure too much to awaken after 100,000 years. So, I'm afraid that no one will be able to accept being defeated by me at that time. Tan Tan sneered. He was about to speak when Chu Yang interrupted him. In fact, you know that this isn't impossible. Tan Tan remained silent for a long time. Then he sneered and said, I've never been defeated in my entire life, except for that person. I believe that it would be a wonderful thing if you could make me lose in a carefree manner. Chu Yang smiled. I believe that you won't be disappointed. Tan Tan laughed. He stopped laughing after a long time. Then he said, in fact, I have one more thing to remind you apart from this matter. Chu Yang asked, what is it? The person who created the Calamity Sword destroyed too many creatures. So, his resentment soared to the sky. So, the resentment of these tens of billions of souls needs to be resolved by the Calamity Sword. And this is the true mission of the Calamity Sword Masters. I don't know much about this, but since that person created the Calamity Sword, I don't think he did it for fun. Since he could destroy billions of lives with a flip of his hand, he wouldn't care if the remaining people could live in peace. As for the happiness of the creatures, he wouldn't care even more about it. So, why did the Calamity Sword appear? This is something worth pondering. Tan Tan smiled and said, you have to be careful. Don't let me be unkillable after I awaken. Chu Yang remained silent. Then he said, thank you for the reminder. Tan Tan smiled. You don't have to thank me because you're his successor. He must have had a purpose and a plan for passing down the Calamity Sword. Destroying his plan is the happiest thing I've ever done. Chu Yang laughed involuntarily. Tan Tan clasped his hands behind his back. He was still standing in the void. Then he slowly said with some uncertainty, there is one more thing. Chu Yang asked, one more thing? It's about the major races. 10,000 years ago, the major races disappeared at the same time. Tens of billions of lives were lost. But the bloodlines of the major races still circulate in the world. Since the wind and clouds have gathered, someone must be lucky enough to come out. If you can meet him. He repeated this sentence twice. Then he smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said, everything has its own destiny. Whether you meet him or not, you have your own rules of conduct and bottom line in life. So it's up to you. Chu Yang faintly said, oh. But he was thinking rapidly in his heart. Are there other races in this world? I originally thought that I would have a lot to say to you. But I realized that there isn't much to say when I really talk to you. Tan Tan smiled. I'm done. Chu Yang was silent. Then he said, you've said so much. I only want to say one thing. Something happens to my brother, I will kill you no matter what method I use. Tan Tan laughed heartily. The brothers had been anxiously waiting for them by the time the two of them returned. And Tianji's caravan had also arrived late. Chu Yang came to know that Tianji had suddenly fallen into a coma after he had left. And he had remained unconscious until now. And this had caused the entire caravan to panic. Chu Yang was startled. He quickly walked into the tent to take a look. He saw that Tianji's eyes were tightly closed. He was lying on the soft bed in an unconscious state. There was still a trace of fresh blood on the corner of his mouth. What happened? Chu Yang suddenly raised his head and asked. We don't know. The clan lord suddenly became like this. The second elder of the Mo clan said, a strange phenomenon appeared in the world after you had left. The clan lord suddenly felt sword energy soaring to the sky. Then he took out 7 purple crystal tokens. It seemed as if he was doing a divination. The second elder tightly knitted his brows. He anxiously said, but we don't know why, but the 7 purple crystal tokens suddenly turned into dust. Then, the clan lord only said one sentence before he fainted. What did he say? Chu Yang asked anxiously. The second elder said, the clan lord's complexion was very unsightly at that time. He suddenly said without rhyme or reason, the heavenly secrets are in chaos, and the heart of the sword is broken. There is no other shore in the lake of despair. How could this be? How could this be? Then he fainted and never woke up again. Chu Yang's heart shook. His complexion suddenly became as pale as paper. Chapter 667. Chu Yang still remembered that when he left the Mo clan, Tianji had said that he had obtained the true inheritance of controlling the world. He could also peek into the secrets of heaven. Chu Yang remembered that Mo Tianji was full of confidence when he said this. Chu Yang knew that Mo Tianji was not just peeking into the secrets of heaven. Mo Tianji must have had a very deep understanding of heaven. Because Mo Tianji was not a boastful person. Even if he was confident, he would not say it. Now that he had said it, he was at least 80% confident. In other words, he was very confident in predicting heaven's secrets and avoiding calamities. But now, he was clearly suffering from the backlash of heaven's secrets. Chu Yang frowned and his face turned gloomy. But if that was the case, the timing did not match. Your clan master immediately began to predict heaven's secrets after I left? Did he start when the sword energy soared into the sky? Chu Yang asked. The second elder's white beard shook. Is it yes or no? Chu Yang became somewhat anxious. This old bastard can't even speak clearly? The clan master began when the sword energy soared into the sky. But nothing happened that time. Instead, the clan master was a little happy. After waiting for 6 hours, the clan master suddenly felt something again. Then he did it again, but this time, there was an accident. Chu Yang calculated in his heart. Finally, he was shocked. According to the time, Mo Tianji should have started to predict again when Chu Yang was possessed by the sword spirit. But he suffered from the backlash of heaven's secrets. However, the information that he revealed before he fainted was rather shocking to Chu Yang. Heaven's secrets were in chaos, and the sword heart was broken. There was no other shore in the lake of despair. What did this mean? Heaven's secrets were in chaos because Chu Yang had broken his destiny. What did the sword heart mean? There was no other shore in the lake of despair. Did this mean that Chu Yang, the master of the calamity sword, would never reach the other shore in the lake of despair? Chu Yang thought and smiled. He thought, am I, the master of the calamity sword, fighting against the heavens all my life? Going against heaven's will and changing my fate, is this not over yet? Besides, if I really can't pass this time, will I have any regrets? Chu Yang was lost in thought. Then he finally smiled. Mo Jianghu had already changed her fate. From now on, her life would be smooth sailing. Even if he wasn't by her side, there shouldn't be any danger. Moreover, she was still young. Without him by her side when she grew up, she might not be able to take the feelings of her childhood to heart. As for his brothers, their lives were already on the right track, so there was no need for him to worry about them. His background should be clear now, Chu Yang muttered to himself, so be it. After he finished speaking, he sat down and thought to himself, perhaps I had regrets in my previous life, but in this life, it is perfect. Perfect? Chu Yang himself felt that his life was complete, but, in reality, if he were to die now, he would definitely have more regrets in this life. It was just that there were many things that he didn't know. That was all. Tan Tan walked over and smiled strangely. The heavenly secrets are in chaos, and the heart of the sword is broken? Chu Yang, you're out of luck. Although the second elder's voice was low, with the Devil King's strength, how could he not hear it? At this moment, he couldn't help but gloat a little. This was because he had the deepest feelings towards this kind of immeasurable crisis of the world. He himself had been buried like this for 100,000 years. Now that he saw another guy about to suffer the same fate, he couldn't help but feel that he wasn't alone in his path. Especially when this person had disobeyed the life path of the Calamity Sword Master that was set by that person back then, and thus suffered such a calamity. This made him feel even more satisfied. Even if I'm unlucky, I can only do so. Chu Yang smiled quietly. You're gloating? It seems that your character didn't affect Tan Tan. Instead, Tan Tan's character has influenced you a lot. This feeling is very novel, isn't it? Chu Yang laughed mischievously. Tan Tan revealed a stunned expression. Thinking back to all these years, he had never shown his emotions on his face. Even if a mountain collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. Why did he talk so much after awakening this time? Moreover, all kinds of subtle emotions began to increase. This was simply inconceivable to him. Motherfucker! Tan Tan cursed. Chu Yang laughed. Suddenly, he felt as if his junior martial brother was beside him. His heart felt a lot more comforted. Motianji finally woke up in the afternoon. After waking up, his eyes stared blankly at the top of his head. He was a little absent-minded. He ignored Chu Yang, who was right in front of him. How could this be? Motianji was obviously very confused. He muttered to himself, "This is the custom of the Heaven Layer continent for 10,000 years. How could it happen here? Such an unforeseen event should not have happened at all. If even the Calamity Sword Master had to die, then how did the Heaven Layer continent survive for so many years? This is the will of heaven. Why does it have to change? What's going on?" Motianji rubbed his eyebrows in distress. His eyebrows turned red from rubbing. His willpower had been very strong all his life. Very few things could move him. Even when Emotian Yun had bullied him to the point that he almost couldn't breathe, he had always been indifferent. There was no other expression on his face aside from being calm and collected. But this time he couldn't bear the shock in his heart. After all, changing the will of heaven was something that no one in the world could accept. What happened? Chu Yang asked in a calm and composed manner. It was as if he wasn't asking about himself or his fate. He was so indifferent. "Brother Chu," Emotianji turned around and looked at Chu Yang. His pupils gradually focused, and his eyes finally widened. He suddenly sat up. He used too much strength, and a mouthful of blood overflowed from his mouth. "Why don't we retreat from this decisive battle?" After Emotianji sat up, he was only anxious for a moment. He immediately regained his usual calmness and said thoughtfully, "Next time, we can arrange another battle." "What did you see?" Chu Yang asked cautiously, or, "What did you feel? What did you predict?" Emotianji's face looked a little conflicted. Tan Tan said, "You can say whatever you want. Now, there is no fourth person in the world who can hear what we are talking about here. With me here, even a supreme martial artist can forget about eavesdropping." Emotianji looked at Tan Tan with surprise. Then he lowered his head. "I saw something that I can't believe." Emotianji's eyes revealed his worry. "Is it about me?" Chu Yang asked. "It's about him?" Tan Tan asked. Both of them said almost at the same time. Emotianji smiled bitterly. "Since I confirmed Brother Chu's identity, I have been making all kinds of preparations, including the plan after we reach the heavenly layer, the development of our strength, how to endure, how to act secretly, what to rely on temporarily, what to plan for a long time, what to... In short, I have been thinking about, preparing and planning everything." Emotianji said, "I am such a person. Or rather, Brother Chu came to me. This is my value." Chu Yang said emotionally, "I didn't expect you to start thinking so far ahead." Chu Yang was a little surprised. In this aspect, he could see the biggest difference between him and Emotianji. Chu Yang was good at improvising. But this also exposed that he didn't have much foresight. He always took one step at a time. "I only want stability in front of me, even if there are huge waves behind me." However, Emotianji was different. He planned everything before he acted. He would never act rashly and impulsively. And he would certainly have the most detailed and powerful plan once he acted. So, he wouldn't make a single mistake from the beginning to the end. He would not act easily. But once he acted, he would not let the enemy have any room to struggle and counterattack. One strategized, the other decided victory from 1,000 miles away. Or they were talking about these two people. Emotianji snorted and said, "It's not just that. We've also studied the personalities and temperaments of these few brothers one by one. After we go up, what Gu Duxing does, what he's in charge of, what Dong Wushang does, what GMO does, what Luo Kadi does, what Miao Badong does, what Xie Dan Qiong does, everyone has to be in the most suitable position. Then, everyone together can be of the greatest use." Emotianji was a little angry at Chu Yang's irresponsibility. "The enemy we are about to face is a great clan that has ruled the upper three heavens for 10,000 years. If we don't plan well, we might be wiped out the moment we go up. How can we be careless?" So this time, when I saw the sword energy rushing into the clouds, I knew that it was related to the Tribulation Sword Master. So, I immediately used the world-controlling technique to see through the heavenly secrets. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly. The first time, it was a daunting experience. But who knew that the heavenly secrets would be in chaos? When I used the world-controlling technique for the second time, his eyes revealed an indisputable look. It was already filled with the aura of death. Moreover, all the dangers were in the lake of death. Our opponent this time is nothing to worry about at all. Even the operation of the heavenly design will not show it. This means that we can win the battle. However, we will die and fall into a land of chaos. There is no future and no way back. Just as I was about to investigate further, the operation of Heaven's secret suddenly collapsed. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly. I didn't even have time to get away before I was hit. Then my mind was in chaos. I forced myself to say a few words. After that, I don't know anything anymore. Mo Tianji propped himself up and smiled bitterly. If I didn't wake up in time, these few words would have been enough to wake you up. Chu Yang was touched. He wanted to say something, but he didn't in the end. Just based on this, it doesn't mean that something happened to the Tribulation Sword Master, right? Tan Tan tilted his head and said in a strange voice. In a place filled with the aura of death, a sword broke in the air. Mo Tianji smiled coldly. If it wasn't the Tribulation Sword, I can't think of any sword that could be embedded in the heavenly secrets. Chapter 668. In that case, you are undoubtedly the master of the Tribulation Sword. Tan Tan pondered and laughed strangely. Little one, what have you done to anger the heavens? Chu Yang said angrily, since you have taken over my brother's body, you should call me Big Brother. How can you call me little? Tan Tan was stunned. Chu Yang snorted and said, so what if it is heaven's will? So what if the Tribulation Sword is broken? I, Chu Yang, have never believed in heaven's will. Good attitude. Tan Tan blurted out. Then he said, you are right. Even if heaven's will collapses, there is still a chance of survival. However, you need to find it yourself. If you already believe in fate and encounter such a situation again, you will be done for. Mo Tianji frowned. Chu Yang, the danger this time is all on you. You have to be careful. Chu Yang nodded. I know. He smiled bitterly in his heart. When the sword spirit forcibly took over his body, he knew it. Now, Mo Tianji's control of the world was just inadvertently proving it for him. What about this decisive battle? Mo Tianji asked. If Heaven's will wants to break the Tribulation Sword, then no matter how you hide, it is inevitable. If you try to avoid it, it will only make the next time more dangerous. Chu Yang said lightly, this is my own matter. It has nothing to do with you. The decisive battle can be held as usual. Also, don't tell anyone about this, including Gu Duxing and the others. Don't let them know. Chu Yang said softly, if that happens, Tianji, you have to protect our brothers. I know you can do it. Also, then, you have to be responsible for coordinating between the brothers in the future. In the future, let them be careful. Be cautious. Mo Tianji sighed and then smiled bitterly. He tried to make everyone's situation sound serious. He wanted to dissuade Chu Yang from taking action this time. He didn't expect Chu Yang to find a flaw. The words "a sword broke in the sky" had already explained too many problems. The mysteries of heaven are unpredictable and irreversible. Tan Tan said, Chu Yang is right. You may have avoided this calamity this time, but the next calamity will be even more dangerous. So, the only way to deal with it is to face it head-on. Even if it's death, the only way is to find a way to survive in the land of heavenly secrets. Mo Tianji sighed speechlessly. Chu Yang, on the other hand, was extremely carefree. He said, you don't have to be like this. If we can't even believe in ourselves, then we're really dead. I, Chu Yang, still believe that I can get through this. The three of them didn't speak for a long time. Chu Yang's complexion was relaxed, but Tan Tan's complexion was somewhat solemn. Mo Tianji's brows were tightly knitted, and he was letting out long and short sighs. That night, Mo Tianji quietly woke up Gu Duxing and the others while Chu Yang was whispering to Tan Tan. He finally understood some clues when he heard Chu Yang's sudden outburst. He could not help but let out a long sigh. According to them, the fighting strength that Chu Yang had displayed at that time was absolutely unimaginable. However, Chu Yang clearly hadn't reached the emperor level yet. Even if he had overdrawn his life force, he still wouldn't have had such great power. The only possibility was that Chu Yang had used the mysterious energy of the Calamity Sword. However, this mysterious energy was obviously not something that the current Chu Yang could bear. Therefore, it had triggered a backlash, and had led to such serious consequences. However, Immortal also had nothing to say after he had heard the scene at that time. Would Chu Yang have watched his brothers die if he hadn't taken action? If he could really do that, then he really wouldn't be Chu Yang. Perhaps only one person among the brothers could have done that, and that was himself. He wasn't cold-blooded. Instead, he was weighing the gains and losses. He had left behind a useful body in order to take revenge in the future. However, this was inevitably not hot-blooded enough. Therefore, he could only be a schemer behind the scenes. He wasn't suited to be a commander who would charge and break through the enemy lines and be admired by tens of thousands of people. Mo Tianji forced a smile as he thought of this. If I were an outsider and had to choose between myself and Chu Yang to be my friend, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have chosen myself. I would have chosen Chu Yang. This is perhaps the biggest reason why Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang have chosen Chu Yang as their friend. Naturally, this includes me. When the group set off on the second day, Mo Tianji had recovered some of his strength and was still sitting in the carriage. However, the most valuable thing about Mo Tianji wasn't his battle prowess, but his brain. As long as his brain was still intact, even if Mo Tianji's limbs were broken, his battle prowess wouldn't be affected. However, this group was still a lot more depressing. Everyone was still very harmonious. It could be seen that they were even more harmonious than before. The friendship between them was also even more harmonious. However, each of them had their own thoughts. Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang, Mo Tianji, Xie Danqiong, Ao Xian, and the others often secretly looked at Chu Yang with worried eyes. Moreover, everyone seemed to be relaxed, but in reality, they were as tense as clockwork. As long as there was any movement on Chu Yang's side, these people would definitely stand in front of him at the first moment. Chu Yang could only force a smile in the face of such care. Brother, it's not the enemy that's going against me, it's the heavens. However, he couldn't refuse. Tan Tan and Xie Dan Feng walked together. Both of them were speechless. Xie Dan Feng kept a distance from Tan Tan. Occasionally, she would come close, but Tan Tan would hide again. Both of them were deliberately avoiding each other, but they couldn't help but come into contact with each other. Everyone's heart was filled with bitterness and mixed feelings. When are you going back? Xie Dan Feng asked somewhat interrogatively. Tan Tan touched his nose and forced a smile. He had no choice but to say, soon. Can you go back earlier? In exchange for my Tan Tan to come out? Xie Dan Feng asked. Tan Tan was a little speechless. Elder sister, I have been buried for 100,000 years. I have only been out for less than a day and a half, and you want me to go back? This is too cruel. What's your name? Xie Dan Feng finally asked something useful. 100,000 years ago, my name was Tenshao. Tan Tan recalled his own name. It seemed as if he had gone through a very long period of recollection. He spoke his own name with pride. It was obvious that he was very satisfied with his own name. He said, "What I liked to do the most at that time was to turn my enemies into ashes while chatting and laughing." It's not as good as Tan Tan. Xie Dan Feng wrinkled her nose. She finally said with certainty, "It's too old-fashioned. It's too unpleasant to listen to." Tan Shao almost looked up and spouted a mouthful of blood. Chu Yang was listening on the side. He wrinkled his nose and quickly walked away. Is Tan Tan or Tan Shao better to listen to? This was a question that didn't need to be pondered. Tan Tan couldn't catch up with Tan Shao even if he were to flatter him. Tan Shao wasn't comparable to Tan Shao in terms of artistic conception. However, Big Sister Xie Dan Feng felt that Tan Shao wasn't as good to listen to as Tan Tan even if Tan Shao was the Jade Emperor. I've suffered a blow. Tan Zhao's complexion turned black as he said, "Anyway, it's only for a few days. I'll be reluctant to go back if I stay here for too long. So I'll sleep now." Therefore, the demon king of this generation, Tan Zhao, fell into a deep sleep after a day and a half had passed. Tan Tan woke up. However, Tan Tan was somewhat silent when he woke up this time. He looked at everyone with a guilty conscience. This feeling made the ecstatic Xie Dan Feng fly into a rage. She pinned him down and beat him up. Then, Chu Yang saw this guy's cowering appearance. So, he couldn't help but get angry. Therefore, he gathered his brothers and beat this guy up again. The 2 rounds of beating had made this guy anxious. So, he had recklessly fought back. Tan Tan Xian's subtle sense of guilt had disappeared while they were fighting and making a ruckus. To an apologetic friend, perhaps the only way to pull him back was to use double the rudeness. That's because he would feel that he was still in this collective place. We often have a feeling that the closer a person is to us, the more rude they are to each other. So, we'll call them bastards and idiots when we open our mouths. But we'll call them old farts and old farts when we close our mouths. Quarrels are common. And punches and kicks are even more common. People who treat each other with respect often say, "Thank you," every time they open their mouths. It seems that they are very polite. But even a stranger can see that the distance between them is like a natural moat. Perhaps this is our unique beginning. On the other side, the alliance of the Tian clan and the Black Devil clan was also on the way to the Lake of Despair. Everyone had been silent for a long time. Everyone's face was full of worry. But a smile had blossomed on everyone's face after nearly a month had passed. That was because the reinforcements had finally arrived. The people of the 2 clan had finally invited the reinforcements from the upper 3 heavens after Tu Qianhao had died at the hands of Gu Duxing. Tu Qianhao had asked his subordinates to pass the message to the 2 clan before his death. However, the 2 clan hadn't acted according to Tu Qianhao's words. The number 1 junior of the clan had died a tragic death. This was tantamount to a blood feud. So, how could such a feud go into seclusion with just a few words? Wouldn't that be letting the murderer off too easily? They would have to kill Gu Duxing first even if they wanted to go into seclusion. As for those king-level experts who had brought the message back, they had already been executed by the 2 clan. They have spread rumors to frame the dead young lord. The higher-ups of the 2 clan naturally understood that Tu Qianhao was capable of saying those words given his character. But how could they take revenge for Tu Qianhao if they didn't do so? Kill Gu Duxing? Moreover, our 2 clan would be the number 1 hero as long as the reinforcements arrive. Our 2 clan would naturally take the biggest share after defeating the enemy. This is equivalent to an opportunity for the 2 clan to rise. So, how could we let it go? The only pity is Tu Qianhao. It wouldn't have been difficult for Tu Qianhao to lead the clan to glory if the clan had risen. Gu Duxing would have lamented if he had known about this situation. It's really a pity for Tu Qianhao. Such a heroic figure used his own life to warn his own clan. But it didn't have any effect at all. The army was advancing day by day. But Tianbu Hui had discovered that the Black Devil young master had become taciturn ever since he had returned from ambushing Dong Wushang. He hadn't heard that gloomy voice that seemed capable of drawing people to hell for a long time. 30 doses of medicine. Old Mister said that they were sweet. I drank the first dose tonight. It's been 3 hours. But I still feel as if there's a gold thread in my stomach. Chapter 669. That night, the Black Devil young master was standing under a tree outside the Black Devil camp. It seemed as if he was thinking about something. He was silent like a ghost. If one didn't observe carefully, they wouldn't have noticed him even if they walked past him. Brother Black. Tianbu Hui's white robe fluttered as he walked over from behind him. He looked very confident and at ease in the dusky night. The surrounding guards saw that the 2 men had something to talk about. So they tactfully made way for them. The Black Devil young master frowned slightly behind his mask. A trace of disgust appeared on his face. Then he covered it up and turned around. He asked in a sinister voice, "What's the matter?" "It's nothing. But Brother Black has been silent for the past few days. So I'm a little worried now that the war is about to begin." Tianbu Hui's sharp eyes flashed as he said, "What's there to worry about?" The Black Devil young master smiled coldly. "There are many people here. Moreover, there's no lack of experts. Most of the big clans haven't suffered any injuries. Moreover, the Dong clan has invited reinforcements from the upper three heavens. So, victory is in their hands. What are you worried about?" His words were still cold and sinister. However, Tianbu Hui could faintly hear a trace of anger and ridicule in his voice. This feeling made Tianbu Hui's heart tremble. Suddenly, he became very suspicious. "Brother Black, I don't understand what you're angry about." Tianbu Hui took a deep breath and said, "I wouldn't have said anything to you in the past. After all, you and I couldn't avoid a battle even if this matter ended. However, this is a matter of life and death. So, why has your state of mind become like this?" The Black Devil young master remained silent for a while. His face couldn't be seen behind the mask. After a long while, he said in a mocking tone, "Do you know the difference in strength between us and the enemy?" Tianbu Hui said, "Yes. The O clan has been annihilated on our side. The Meng clan has also turned into smoke. However, their strength is still quite strong. Your clan, my clan, and the Dong clan are the three big clans. The Li clan and the Zhao clan are still intact. Li Xiong too has also agreed to help us in this decisive battle. We have more than 100 Emperor-level experts and 1,200 King-level experts. In addition, we have reinforcements from the upper three heavens." "Wait!" The Black Demon young master waved his hand and cut him off. He sneered and said, "You have such great strength. You haven't even started to fight, but you've already asked for reinforcements?" Tianbu Hui blushed and said, "It's not like you don't know. All I know is that even though I'm just an assassin, I know where the hot blood of a man lies. Even if I'm facing the gods, I won't back down. What's more, in this war that has engulfed the entire three heavens, both sides are fighting openly. Both sides are fighting under the banner of righteousness. This kind of war is destined to go down in the annals of history. But you've tainted her." The Black Devil young master sneered, "You haven't even fought, and you've already invited reinforcements. Tianbu Hui, you call yourself, heaven is inferior. Even heaven is inferior to you, yet you are afraid of this battle? I won't say anything if you invite Li Xiong Tuesday. No matter what, Li Xiong Tu's family is from the three heavens. But why did you invite upper three heavens to intervene? What does the Shi clan of the three heavens have to do with the battle of the three heavens?" The Black Demon young master said coldly, "Tianbu Hui, I look down on you." Tianbu Hui's face turned red. He said angrily, "Do you know who our enemies are? Now that you're saying this, do you feel that you're being unreasonable?" "I'm being unreasonable?" The Black Demon young master suddenly turned around. His pitch-black eyes flashed in the night like two resplendent gems. "Tianbu Hui, are you even qualified to talk about me?" Tianbu Hui was so angry that he was about to explode. However, he controlled himself and said, "Our opponents this time are the Ji clan, the Luo clan, the Gu clan, the Dong clan, the Mo clan, and the Xie clan. Besides the Ji clan, the Luo clan, and the Gu clan, the other three clans are not weaker than us." "Of course, I know this." Hearing the words Dong clan, the Black Demon young master's voice became softer. Tianbu Hui did not notice the change in the other party's tone. He was furious. He said in rapid succession, "In their lineup, there are new sword emperors and saber emperors. Even the others, such as Ji Zhu, Ji Mo, Dong Wulei, Luo Kuwu, and Xie Danqiong, are all outstanding people of the younger generation. Although the Mo clan has declined due to internal strife, don't forget that the person at the helm of the Mo clan is the master of calculation and manipulation, Mo Tianji. Moreover, the invincible king of Hell Chu is also in the enemy's camp. The enemy's emperor-level experts are no less than ours. They are also evenly matched with king-level experts. Once the battle starts, it will be a stalemate. If we continue to fight like this, both sides will perish together. In this kind of battle, everyone has their own opponents. The experts of the older generation naturally have to deal with opponents of the same level. Therefore, when the battle reaches a stalemate, it will be monarch-level experts against monarch-level experts, and emperor-level experts against emperor-level experts. However, both sides have more or less the same level of experts. Even if the enemy has the advantage, our side is not weak. The battle between king-level experts will also be extremely tragic. When the time comes, there is an 80% chance that these forces will perish together. Therefore, the ones who will decide the outcome will be us, the younger generation. However, among the younger generation on our side, who can deal with Gu Du Xing, Dong Wushang, and Chu Yang? Moreover, on our side, who can compare with eunuch King Chu's treachery and Mo Tianji's master of calculation and manipulation? Tian Bu Hui said angrily. Didn't you always say that they don't deserve to be regretted? Now, you finally admit that you are inferior to them? The Black Devil young master looked at him mockingly. Although I said that, I have to admit that their strength is already stronger than mine. Especially Gu Du Xing and Dong Wushang. Tian Bu Hui sighed. I had a fortuitous encounter when I was young, and the meridians in my body were unobstructed. I have not slacked off in my cultivation for many years, and I have just broken through to the emperor level. However, these two Chuans are pure sword emperors and saber emperors. The difference between them can be seen at a glance. However, even if I admit it now, I will still belittle them when I mention it in public. Tian Bu Hui said, because I am not convinced. It is also because of the morale of the army. The Black Devil young master laughed mockingly. Actually, you know that it is not because of this. I am afraid that you think that it is very interesting and successful to belittle others. This is an innate dark mentality. Your Tian clan is the same kind of trash. Tian Bu Hui was furious. Am I wrong? The Black Devil young master did not back down. He raised his head and looked at Tian Bu Hui with disdain. He was a head shorter than Tian Bu Hui, and his body was thin and weak. However, at this moment, the aura of the two surged fiercely, and they did not seem to be at a disadvantage. Tian Bu Hui finally took a deep breath and said, Black Devil, you have changed. He finally swallowed his anger and said, ever since you came back after killing Dong Wushang, your temperament has changed a lot. The Black Devil young master seemed to be startled. He did not speak for a long time. Then he turned his head and said, it is not that I have changed. It is that I still scrupulously abide by the dignity of a martial artist, and you have lost it. Tian Bu Hui said mockingly, the Black Devil young master has always been an assassin. Do you still have the dignity of a martial artist? Whether I have the dignity of a martial artist. Tian Bu Hui, do you want to try? The Black Devil young master suddenly turned his head, and a thin long sword appeared in his hand. The tip of the sword was like a spiritual snake, and it was already at Tian Bu Hui's throat. Tian Bu Hui's eyes flashed, but he did not dodge. He said, you. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt a sword light flash, and a sharp murderous aura attacked him. He turned pale with fright. He leaned back and said angrily, you actually want to kill me? On his chin, there was a thin sword wound, and blood was spurting out. This is just a warning to you. If I wanted to kill you, you would already be dead. The Black Devil young master's sleeves shook, and the thin black long sword suddenly disappeared. He said coldly, but I don't mind killing you directly. He said faintly but sinisterly, I am in a good mood these days. If you want to die, wait until I am in a bad mood. Then, you can doubt my dignity as a martial artist. Tian Bu Hui was so angry that his lips started to tremble. He had never expected that his loyal ally would actually want to kill him at this moment. Black Devil, I will definitely ask you for the sword today after this battle. Tian Bu Hui was so sullen that he almost vomited blood. He suspected that this guy in front of him was crazy. You still don't have confidence. If you have confidence, you should fight with me now. The Black Devil young master said coldly, coward. Compared to Dong Wushang, you can't even compare to a strand of his hair. Tian Bu Hui panted like a mad bull, and said fiercely, Black Devil, you don't care about the big picture. The Black Devil young master snorted and said, the big picture? What does it have to do with me? Tianbu Hui swallowed a mouthful of saliva and resisted the urge to kill. He suppressed his anger and said, I won't bicker with you. I only want to ask you, who will you be responsible for once the battle starts? The Black Devil young master snorted and turned around. He said softly, Dong Wushang. Tianbu Hui said heavily, Good. He turned around and left. He didn't want to stay with this dangerous guy for even a moment longer. Who will you be responsible for? The Black Devil young master asked calmly. I will be responsible for Eunuch Chu. Tianbu Hui said fiercely. You are really courageous. The Black Devil young master didn't know whether he was praising or criticizing him. Same here. Your Dong Wushang is also not an ordinary person. Tianbu Hui snorted and left with big strides. His figure was about to disappear into the forest. My Dong Wushang? The Black Devil young master muttered in a low voice, and his voice became very strange. The Black Devil young master saw that Tianbu Hui was about to leave, and suddenly asked, How did you deal with those people from the AO clan? Why did they turn to deal with Eunuch Chu? There must be a reason for this, right? Moreover, it must be a secret? Chapter 670. Those people from the AO clan may not be elegant, but they are still geniuses. Even if they were stupid, they wouldn't have attacked King of Hell Chu's brothers without a reason. They wouldn't have attacked the Xie clan. This is simply putting the cart before the horse. After all, the enemy of the AO clan is us, not those people. What role do you play in this? The Black Devil young master asked calmly. It's actually very simple to deal with them. Tianbu Hui snorted. Their weakness is too obvious. They are blinded by greed. They can be caught with one grab. The most important thing is that Ao Xie Yun didn't die. This is very important. This is their sore point. I see. The Black Devil young master's eyes lit up. Therefore, King of Hell Chu and the Xie clan are their biggest enemies. They have saved Ao Xie Yun. It was also a life and death grudge that he hated to the bone. Although we tried to kill Ao Xie Yun and are the enemies of the Ao clan, we have become their helpers in the eyes of these people. Of course, there are other reasons and methods. But you don't need to know about these things. Tianbu Hui said. What's the result of their battle? The Black Devil young master asked sharply, Why did you seal the news? Tianbu Hui was silent for a while. Then he said, The Xie clan is already half dead. As for other news, or the final news, it hasn't arrived yet. However, Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing have already rushed to rescue them, although they might not be able to catch up. Tianbu Hui revealed a mocking smile. Actually, I would rather they catch up. That way, we might be able to save a lot of effort. The Black Devil young master was silent for a long time. Then he slowly said, Dong Wushang won't die. Because he's your opponent? Tianbu Hui laughed. I didn't expect that the Black Devil young master, who has always been assassinating people, would have such a Jianghu demeanor. It's a pity that you don't. The Black Devil young master said coldly, Otherwise, I would think highly of you. I don't care about Jianghu demeanor or martial arts demeanor before I can be sure of my survival. Demeanor, self-restraint, and temperament are just like the history books. They belong to the victors. Once I win and reach the peak, I will let you see that I, Tianbu Hui, am still unmatched by anyone. Tianbu Hui changed the topic. He obviously wanted to end this unpleasant conversation as soon as possible. He said coldly, Since you've decided to deal with Dong Wushang, you should be prepared. I don't want to go to your grave to fight you in the future. You won't be disappointed as long as you can survive King of Hell Chu. That's because you'll have another chance to die by my hands. The Black Devil young master didn't yield an inch as he replied with equal harshness. Tianbu Hui snorted angrily and said, This is unreasonable. Wait until you've killed Dong Wushang. With a whoosh, he dashed through the forest. The Black Demon young master coldly watched Tianbu Hui leave. His black gem-like eyes flickered with a complicated radiance. After a long while he muttered, I killed Dong Wushang? Why should I kill Dong Wushang? He sighed and muttered to himself in a low voice, Why should I kill Dong Wushang? Then he stood there alone and looked at the stars in the sky. He didn't move for a long time. The look in his eyes kept changing. It was unknown how many colors had changed in an instant. After a long while, he sighed again. The Sher clan of the Three Heavens has sent a large number of people to assist the two clan this time. Could it be that their relationship has reached such a stage? If so, why is the two clans still staying in the Three Heavens? If the Sher clan has other plans, then what are they planning? What should I do? He stood there for the entire night. His mind was in a mess. That faint sighing sound didn't stop. Chu Yang and the others were startled when the large group of people turned around the mountain valley early in the morning. Chu Yang and the others were shocked. A group of people was standing quietly 1,000 feet ahead. There were at least 500 people. However, they didn't make any sound, nor did they leak any aura. When Chu Yang and the others turned the corner, they were immediately discovered by the other side. 500 sharp gazes were shot at them at the same time. Their aura exploded like a thunderstorm. Everyone felt their hearts stagnate. Gu Duxing, who was in the lead, slowly straightened his body. His eyes narrowed slightly. Dong Wushang's eyelids drooped. His iron-like face was expressionless. The index finger of his right hand gently patted the scabbard. A sword energy and a saber energy surged out violently like this. They were like rainbows that streaked across the distance of 1,000 feet. They attacked head-on. Two majestic auras came from the opposite group. They intercepted the sword energy and saber energy. A dense gas flashed in the invisible space between them. It seemed that something had collided in the sky above the two groups. Then it dissipated. A majestic voice slowly said, "What a pure sword energy! What an overbearing saber energy! Could it be that the Sword Emperor and Saber Emperor of the Three Heavens is here? Gu Duxing? Dong Wushang." Gu Duxing coldly said, "So what? For you?" "It is indeed you." The one who spoke has a sword-like tone. He is upright and proud. He is cold and lonely. "You must be the Sword Emperor, Gu Duxing?" That voice had a hint of killing intent. "That's me." "Are you?" Gu Duxing lightly said. He sensed the hostility of the other party. His vigilance rose greatly. His sword moved. The black dragon sword in the scabbard hummed silently. Its sword intent was awe-inspiring. "The other one is Dong Wushang, right?" That majestic voice said coldly. "Yes, it is you, Second Master Dong." Dong Wushang shouted. He rushed out in an arrogant and overbearing manner. He had wanted to speak long ago. But Gu Duxing was talking to the other party. As a brother, Dong Wushang couldn't interrupt. This was out of respect for his elder brother. So, Dong Wushang controlled himself. Now, the brothers had gone through thick and thin together. As time passed, their brotherhood grew deeper and deeper. Everyone cared more and more about it. So, everyone valued the order of seniority more and more. It didn't matter if it was a normal joke. But when it came to serious matters, this order of seniority was something that no one could break. Think about it. The elder brother was talking to the enemy in front. If the younger brother interrupted, wouldn't it be telling the enemy that the elder brother didn't have any prestige? Moreover, the younger brother was too casual? Or, the brothers didn't get along well? These were all taboo things. "My second Master Dong?" That majestic voice slowly said. He chuckled and said in a low voice, "You are indeed worthy of being the Saber Emperor. Such boldness is not bad. However, extreme hardness is easy to break. Today, I will break this Saber Emperor." Dong Wushang laughed loudly and shouted, "Break? You sneaky bastard. Are you worthy of saying this? I, Dong Wushang, am crazy to the heavens, crazy to the earth, and crazy to the enemy. I am crazy in an open and above-board manner. Even if hardness is easy to break, I would rather break than bend. You haven't even shown your face until now. How dare you speak such arrogant words? What kind of family are you from?" The opposite party had been hiding in the group while speaking. He hadn't shown himself. "Ha! Fourth brother, this guy must have been taught by Master's wife." Luo Kadi laughed loudly. "How can this guy dare to show his face? Perhaps he will reveal two big white buttocks the moment he shows himself." "Nonsense!" GMO reprimanded Luo Kadi. "How can a buttock speak? They don't have mouths. The opposite party had said that he would break the Saber Emperor. So, he was an irreconcilable enemy. GMO and Luo Kadi had always been sharp-tongued when it came to the enemy. So, they wouldn't show any mercy. Third brother, you don't know. He is talking nonsense. Luo Kadi and GMO's cooperation was flawless. Especially, the two of them were very cooperative in cursing and insulting others. I was wondering. GMO nodded as if he had suddenly realized something. I was wondering how one could speak with buttocks. So, that's how it is. Little Wolf is indeed wise. Luo Kadi proudly said, Third brother, what you said earlier was also wrong. Who said that his buttocks don't have mouths? Don't they still have mouths? GMO flew into a rage. He reprimanded, So, Little Wolf, you are still young and ignorant. Is that a mouth? That is clearly a flower waiting to bloom. Waiting to bloom. Luo Kadi was in fear and trepidation. He readily accepted the good advice. Third brother reprimanded me. I misjudged him. But, how can it bloom? Stupid. GMO's face darkened. He had expected better from Luo Kadi. Wait until your fourth brother Dong inserts the black saber or the scabbard of the black saber. Then, won't the flower bloom? Luo Kadi said with fascination, So, that's how it is. Presumably, the mood at that moment will be a myriad of colors. You are wrong again. GMO speechlessly said, There will certainly be a myriad of colors. But, there won't necessarily be a myriad of colors. There will be yellow, white, green, red, or black. Luo Kadi scratched his head. He was at a loss. Third brother, I understand white and red. But how can there be yellow, green, and black? GMO was furious. Don't tell me that piercing his gallbladder won't result in green? This person's heart is black. Can't you see it? As for yellow, did you relieve yourself today? Luo Kadi suddenly realized. He prostrated himself in admiration. Third brother is indeed profound. Listening to your words today is better than reading the books of the past 10 years. GMO stuck out his chest and protruded his belly. You flatter me. This is life experience. You are still young. You must pay attention to the accumulation. You will be like me when you experience more and see more of these disgusting people. Then your eyes will be as bright as a torch. My admiration for third brother is like the water of the Milky Way. It is unceasing. It is also like the waves of the sea. Each wave is stronger than the previous one. Luo Kadi bowed with his hands clasped in front. The other side was silent for a long time. Suddenly, a roar shook the sky. A severely irrepressible voice said, I will tear you apart one by one. Then, a figure rushed out with a whooshing sound. It turned into a green lightning in the sky, and crazily pounced over. This ridicule had angered that person so much that he had lost his cool. If both sides were close to each other and started fighting, it would have no effect on either side. But, he had left his team in a fit of rage. Instead, he had come to Dong Wuxiang's side. This meant that Dong Wuxiang had the geographical advantage. Behind him was a majestic team. Beside him were brothers of life and death. Therefore, as long as this person left the team, even if the two of them were on par, Dong Wuxiang's confidence would be much stronger than his. If that was the case, the chances of victory would be greater. Chapter 671. Chu Yang looked at Luo Dongdi and GMO with a smile in his eyes. I'll do it. Dong Wuxiang's gaze locked onto the other party's approaching figure. His figure moved and he dismounted from his horse. He stood on the ground and gripped the hilt of his saber with one hand. Then he strode forward step by step in a dignified manner. Let him show off. Luo Kadi stomped his feet and roared. His saliva splashed in all directions. Fourth brother is mighty. Let him come out in yellow, white, red, green, and black. GMO also shouted, Yes. Let him know that a saber emperor can use a spear as well as a saber. Huyaneo also laughed out loud. He pinched a small piece of flesh on GMO's waist with his finger and fiercely twisted it in a circle. GMO screamed. He felt extremely miserable. Tan Tan was still thinking about something. He was digesting the memories that he had intermittently received during this time. He blankly raised his head when he saw everyone laughing. Then he asked Xie Danfeng beside him, "What happened?" Xie Danfeng's mouth twitched. She had a strange expression on her face. She angrily said, "It's none of your business." Tan Tan said, "Oh, everyone is laughing so happily." Then he suddenly thought of something. So he hastily put on a shocked expression. Then he asked again in a shocked manner, "What are you laughing about?" "Get lost." Xie Danfeng slapped him on his horse and he staggered. Chu Yang resisted the urge to laugh. He looked at the two people who were approaching him. The other party had lost his reason in a fit of rage. However, his strength was no small matter. But a gust of wind swept over like a bolt of lightning. It was so fast that his body turned into a fuzzy green shadow. The friction between his body and the air was issuing sonic booms as he moved forward. However, Dong Wuxiang solemnly stepped forward to meet him. It seemed as if his feet weighed 1,000 pounds. He was moving forward along with the entire mountain. The other party was extremely fast. However, Dong Wuxiang was extremely slow. One was fast and the other was slow. This was a sharp contrast. Grade Emperor level. Sword Spirit gave an evaluation in Chu Yang's mind. Chu Yang slowly nodded. His heart relaxed a little. Grade Emperor level was much higher than Dong Wuxiang in terms of cultivation. In fact, it was more than twice as much. However, the other party was an ordinary Emperor level expert. And Dong Wuxiang was a domineering Saber Emperor. Moreover, Dong Wuxiang had the help of the dark saber that weighed 570 kilograms. So, the gap between the two of them was infinitely shortened. Therefore, this battle was more daunting than dangerous. In the blink of an eye, that person let out a long howl and swooped down from the sky like a dark cloud. His green robe fluttered in the wind, making him look like a huge goshawk. Then, it ferociously devoured Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang suddenly raised his head. His long hair fluttered behind his head. Then he fiercely thrust his dark saber forward. With a humming sound, the black saber brought out a solid black saber light. Dong Wuxiang did not dodge at all. He used a resolute stance to meet the opponent's long-prepared attack head-on. Sword light flashed. A snow-white longsword and the black saber collided fiercely. Neither side held back. With a loud bang, the soil around Dong Wuxiang's body was fiercely stirred up. Then, the soil shot out in all directions. In the middle of the explosion, Dong Wuxiang's black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were like lightning. His lips were tightly pursed. His legs were deeply embedded in the ground. However, his body only swayed a little. He did not retreat a single step. That person in the sky let out a roar. Then he flipped backward 7 or 8 times like a whirlwind. When he landed on the ground, he raised his head and looked at Dong Wuxiang with a shocked expression. He had never expected that this young Saber Emperor's strength would be so tyrannical. Everyone finally saw clearly that this person was an old man with white hair. He looked to be in his 50s. At this moment, his white beard was trembling slightly. Dong Wuxiang roared. His majestic body suddenly pulled itself out of the ground. Soil flew everywhere. His dark saber immediately turned into a black lightning, and a torrential rain of 108 sabers rained down on Dong Wuxiang's head. That person repeatedly roared. He continuously used his sword to block. The two people rolled and rolled. One could only see a white light and a black energy entwined together. Gradually, they became indistinguishable from each other. Then, they turned into a black and white tornado. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing stood at the front. They were watching this fight without blinking. So far, they did not know who the other party was. However, they were certain that the other party was hostile to them. The opposite team slowly pressed forward. They quietly watched the fight from a distance of more than 200 feet away. Unexpectedly, no one made a sound. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing looked at each other. They became cautious. Generally speaking, in a fight between such powerhouses, even those below the king level would have to retreat at least 300 feet away to avoid accidental injuries. Especially the saber energy of a saber emperor. It was a deadly thing. However, these people were so close to each other. But no one had a worried look on their faces. In fact, the faces of the few people in front were full of interest. In fact, they were somewhat eager to try it out. From this, it could be seen that these people were not ordinary people. For a moment, the sound of saber and sword colliding echoed. It was getting louder and louder. It was deafening. Chu Yang frowned. This was an extremely abnormal phenomenon. In a fight between experts of this level, it was rare to hear the sound of collision. It was as if iron was being hammered. However, these two people were clearly violating the norm. From this, it could be seen that both sides had similar fighting styles. And the other side must have a rare divine weapon. Otherwise, they would not have dared to fight so recklessly. Even if they had dared to, their weapons would have been broken long ago. So, they would not be making such loud collision sounds. A faint trace of anxiety appeared on Chu Yang's face. This person's strength was only that of a first-grade emperor-level expert. But he had such a valiant fighting style and a divine weapon in his hand. He was not inferior to an 8th-grade emperor-level expert. Dong Wuxiang must be under a lot of pressure. The sound of horse hooves came from behind. A horse came forward from the crowd. Ao Xie Yun came to Chu Yang's side. Chu Yang turned and looked at him questioningly. "It's my family." Ao Xie Yun's voice was very bitter. "Is it your family's people or your uncle's people?" Chu Yang asked cautiously. "My family." Ao Xie Yun's voice was very certain. The corner of Chu Yang's mouth curved into a meaningful smile. Then he frowned. "Has your father, Clan Master Ao, lost control of the clan?" "Absolutely not." Ao Xie Yun said, "My father has always been in charge of all the affairs of the clan. It's just that in these years, as the clan master's power has been increasing, the clan master's power has also been increasing. My uncles are all stupid and have secretly made some small moves. But on the whole, the clan is still stable. This level of stability is really a pleasant surprise for me." Chu Yang chuckled. Ao Xie Yun smiled very bitterly. The complexity of a clan is unimaginable to outsiders. The complexity of a clan that has already stabilized its position is even more unimaginable to outsiders. When the Ao clan was founded 1,000 years ago, there were 5 brothers among the ancestors. They were called the 5 Tigers of Ao Tian. There were also 3 sworn brothers. They were all outstanding people of the present age. The 8 brothers worked together to establish a firm foothold in the upper 3 heavens. They used to go through trials and tribulations together. They even used to risk their own lives for each other. Ao Xie Yun was talking about the history of the Ao clan at such a time. This made Chu Yang a little surprised. But he still listened carefully. Ao Xie Yun was also an outstanding person of his generation. He wouldn't talk nonsense without a purpose. Especially in such a situation. Chu Yang listened while thinking about Ao Xie Yun's intentions. But after the foundation was established, the conflicts became bigger and bigger. First, 3 brothers who didn't share the same surname started to rebel. They weren't willing to be family retainers or even consecrators. Everyone knew that although consecrators sounded nice, the descendants of consecrators were family retainers. If they were unworthy, they would be reduced to servants. So, they weren't willing. But there could only be one clan lord of the Ao clan. The establishment of a clan requires a centralization of power. Otherwise, it would still be in a state of disunity. But such centralization represents the seniority of the elders. It also represents the formal and clear division of the relationship between master and servant. Therefore, the 3 brothers who didn't share the same surname started to rebel. The brothers also started to kill each other. Eventually, they were annihilated. The vitality of the Ao clan was also greatly damaged. In that battle, the 5 Tigers of Ao Tian also killed one of them. After those 3 were annihilated, the Ao clan developed steadily for a few years. Then 2 brothers felt that it was unfair. This was because their children were not of the direct line of descent from the moment they were born. Only the bloodline of the clan head could be considered as the direct line of descent. Therefore, as time went by, perhaps after 3 generations, they would turn from brothers to servants. Therefore, the difference was huge. Therefore, the Ao clan was in chaos again. Only the two brothers were left in the end. But it was inevitable that there would be a final split. Therefore, only our branch of the Ao clan was left. Our ancestor won all the battles. But he also lost all his brothers. He became a loner. He was extremely sad. So, he used his blood-dripping sword to carve a few words on a stone tablet at the moment of complete victory. The sword is cold and the blade is cold. But the heart is even colder. He wanted to say something but forgot to say it. Look at the cold blade dripping with blood. Every drop of blood is the destruction of brothers. Our ancestor carved this poem on a stone tablet and erected it in the clan's hall. It was supposed to be a family instruction to wake up the later generations. But who would have thought that it didn't become a family instruction to wake up the later generations? Instead, it became something like a curse. When the second generation of Ao clan's ancestor arrived, the 13 brothers started to fight like this again. No one was willing to admit defeat. So, it was passed down from generation to generation. The Ao clan developed for 1,000 years. In fact, it was an internal struggle within the clan for 1,000 years. Ao Xie bitterly pursed his lips and heaved a long sigh. In fact, it's not just the Ao clan. It's the same for other clans. Ao Xie said, if a clan wants to gradually become stronger, it must endure this kind of bloodshed. This is the law. Chu Yang slowly nodded. It seemed as if he was thinking about something. Then he said, it's indeed cruel. Students, if you find any typos or other mistakes, you can explain it in the book review and comment section. I really like how serious you guys are. I hope that I can also write seriously. I'm serious. Sure, I wrote the book to amuse everyone. You guys laughed. My goal has been achieved. It would have been a pleasant surprise if you guys could think about it. As for talking about my own matters at the end of the chapter, it's probably my habit. It's been like this since the first book. I hope that you guys can understand me as well as the book. I really think of everyone as friends who I can confide in. I often stay at home. I also hope that everyone can understand me. Perhaps, this is my extravagant hope. I always hope that I can gain something else besides my normal work. For example, friendship. That would make me feel that this illusory network is full of warmth. I like this kind of environment. I like friends. The more the better. Of course, I can ignore the friends that I don't like. Just treat it as if I'm not sick. I don't apologize for this. Chapter 672. Cruel? Ao Xiyun smiled sadly. Such a cruel opportunity is not something that everyone can bear. Only the big clans have such an experience. Therefore, the younger generation of the aristocratic clans usually matures earlier than the commoners. Chu Yang, the Ao clan has been developing for thousands of years. To be precise, it has been 1,150 years. On average, a generation is born every 18 years. That's more than 70 generations. In a clan like this, which grandson doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Which normal man doesn't have 7 or 8 women? If such a tragedy didn't happen, the population of the Ao clan would have already exceeded 1 million. What kind of colossus would that be? But now, other than the warriors with different surnames, there are only a few thousand people in the clan. Most of the clansmen died because of the word ambition. It's easy to go through hardships together, but it's even more difficult to go through riches together. In times of hardship, the future is uncertain. Everyone is in danger. If they don't unite, they will be destroyed. Therefore, they were able to work together. It was normal for brothers to die and brothers to die. It was also normal for them to sing songs and weep. But once the struggle succeeds, everyone wants to eat the sweetest one when they enjoy the fruits of victory. Because everyone has sacrificed. Everyone's sacrifice is no less than the others. Therefore, ambition and desire will breed at this moment. They will grow crazily and eventually become uncontrollable. Even if it's not for themselves, they will not be satisfied for their grandchildren. Which parent doesn't want to become a dragon? Which pair of parents will be willing to let the child that they have painstakingly raised and placed their hopes on become someone else's servant? Therefore, after every clan is successfully established, it must go through a bloodbath from generation to generation in order to slowly grow stronger. Every clan will first extend the butcher's knife to their own clansmen, their own brothers, and then to their enemies. Therefore, after an emperor ascends the throne, he usually doesn't expand the territory. Instead, he first eliminates the meritorious officials. Once the birds are killed, the bow is discarded. This is the inevitable development of all clans and countries. Ao Xian looked at Chu Yang steadily. This is the price that successful people have to pay. Moreover, it's a price that will be hidden forever. And it can't be avoided. Chu Yang pondered over Ao Xian's words and understood something. At such a crucial moment, Ao Xian would never be so bored as to discuss the development of his family and country with him. He must have his own intentions. Chu Yang had already guessed some of Ao Xian's good intentions. After going through such a purge, every family head would be physically and mentally exhausted. They would burn incense and pray that their children and descendants would not fight for power and profit, and that they would live in harmony. However, every family head would be disappointed in the end. As parents, every family head is deeply in love with their children. They can't bear to deal with their own children, unless they went too far. Therefore, once the successor is determined, the parents will feel that they have treated their other children unfairly except for this successor. As for this successor, they will be resentful of Iron for not living up to their expectations and will become stricter and stricter. In this way, the other brothers are doted on, and some even become arrogant, while the successor is in danger. Therefore, the next successor of the family head, once their position is confirmed, they will start to deal with their own brothers. Because if he did not deal with them, he would not be able to survive. Therefore, the future troubles will begin when the second child of every clan head is born. The more women there are, the greater the damage. Therefore, the path of every clan head from the confirmation of his position to the successful ascension is bloody. Therefore, every clan head is also a ruthless and decisive person of his generation. Such elimination is like a great wave washing away the sand. It is enough to train the winner's heart to be as hard as stone. My father had more than 30 brothers, but now there are less than 10 people left. Then where did my other uncles go? Ao Xian laughed, but it was a heart-wrenching laugh. Now, the few people left will also follow in the footsteps of those people. The person who is fighting now is an expert trusted by my uncle. Chu Yang nodded silently. I understand what you mean. You are reminding me of the conflicts that may arise between us brothers in the future, right? Ao Xian laughed self-deprecatingly. I am very convinced by you now. I am also very willing and very eager to be your brother. He paused and said sincerely, but this does not mean that when my son grows up in the future, he will also be convinced by your son. It is the same for them. This is not sowing discord, nor is it alarmist talk. It is the cruelest reality. Everyone wants to be the boss, and no one wants to just be the underling. Especially our children, who have our excellent genes, are even more impossible for them to be ordinary people. Naturally, they will not be willing to be under others. My clan is like this, and so are the other clans. Dong Wushang and Dong Wulei's brotherhood is very deep. But if Dong Wushang had not followed you, the two brothers would have had a life-and-death battle sooner or later. It is the same for Luo Kadi and Luo Kuo. Mo Tianji and Mo Tianyun are in a life-and-death battle. Isn't it also because of this? Ao Xian looked at the two people in the battle circle and said indifferently, I have been wandering the martial world during this period of time, and I am also tired of the power struggle between clans. But during this period of time, I have been hunted down repeatedly, and it made me understand this principle. And the heavenly army that you have established is not such a clan. So today, I will say this to you. Because of you, it can be avoided. After all, the brothers of the heavenly army have different surnames. Chu Yang thought for a long time and said, I am willing to listen to your wise opinion. Ao Xian said, I dare not say that I am wise, but as the leader of the heavenly army, only you can start to formulate a way to avoid this kind of future trouble. Only then can the heavenly army become truly strong and powerful, and even become an overlord. In other words, us brothers are together to create an overlord. But this kind of overlord has nothing to do with our descendants. We are brothers, not subordinates. But our descendants can't continue on our path. If they want to build this kind of relationship between us, then they have to fight for it themselves. Seniority is also something that we have to fight for. Just like how you are the youngest now, but you can be the boss. Everyone trusts you. This is the reason. In the long run, there may be fewer people, but as long as there are people left, they will be like us. Chu Yang thought silently. After a long time, he said, "This method is feasible, but it is not perfect. Besides, it is still too early to think about the future. After I have discussed with Mo Tianji and the others, I will come up with a perfect plan and discuss it with the brothers." Ao Shiyun smiled and said, "It is better to do it sooner rather than later. The sooner the better. And a group like ours is the easiest to solve. And you and Mo Tianji are the two people that I am most at ease with. So I am telling you today." Chu Yang nodded deeply. Ao Shiyun smiled again. "In fact, using my own clan as an example, this kind of feeling is really indescribable. Fortunately, although there are some words that don't convey the meaning, I have finally finished speaking. However, the purpose isn't this, but something else." His eyes were deeply focused on Dong Wushang, who was in the middle of the battle. He said, "This encounter, although there will be a battle, but there will definitely not be any danger. You can rest assured on this point." Chu Yang looked at him with some surprise and said, "Don't tell me, this is what you said just now, another purge of the clan." "Purge? And this time, the purge belongs to me." Ao Shiyun's eyebrows and the corners of his eyes had never stopped from the beginning. "I also thought of this after seeing them again. I didn't expect that you would have already guessed it the moment I opened my mouth. The people of Ao clan came out with the intention of avenging me." Ao Shiyun said, "So, they attacked the Black Devil, Tian clan, and the others first. But they suddenly changed their direction and attacked us instead. This point was originally very puzzling. I have finally figured it out now. The news that I was still alive must have spread out at that time. Since I am still alive, there is enough reason for those people of the Black Devil to use them. Moreover, the clan must have made a decision to force them to take the risk out of desperation. It was a life and death struggle. Perhaps the clan had decided on this purge plan from that time." Ao Shiyun said in disappointment and frustration, "This is also the tradition of our clan. We will force those with ambitions to jump out of their own accord. Then, we will purge them in the name of righteousness." Chu Yang smiled mischievously. "I can imagine. So, you don't take it to heart." Ao Shiyun hesitated for a long time. "This, I won't take it to heart. And the Xie clan won't take it to heart either." Chu Yang calmly said, "Your Ao clan must give an explanation after this matter is over. Otherwise, this matter will become a knot in your heart." Ao Shiyun was silent. He exposed an ashamed look on his face. No matter what, the Ao clan had used Chu Yang and the others to carry out this purge. The Xie clan had almost been exterminated because of this matter. So, how could this be settled with just a few words? On one side, Mo Tianji was still weary in the carriage. He had been quietly listening to the conversation between the two. He carefully looked at Ao Shiyun's back as he heard this. His eyes exposed an expression of deep contemplation. He thought, "This Ao Shiyun is very far-sighted. But this matter, how should we deal with it? Is there any way to get the best of both worlds?" Ao Shiyun suggested to Chu Yang. However, Chu Yang only thought for a while, because he felt that this matter was too far away. Moreover, he couldn't be impatient. It would be better to plan slowly. However, Mo Tianji had always been a person who planned ahead. So, he began to rack his brains. He became worried for his future generations. Therefore, he began to plan. The battle between the two men had reached a white-hot state. Dong Wushang was in high spirits. He repeatedly shouted. Every saber attack was accompanied by a loud shout. The saber was like lightning, and the sound was like thunder. His hair and beard fluttered in the wind. He only attacked without defending. His tall and majestic body was pressing forward step by step like a deity. His opponent's cultivation was clearly much stronger than Dong Wuxiang's, but under his opponent's peerless aura, he was slowly losing ground. Apart from parrying, he couldn't even find a chance to retreat out of the encirclement. He was barely holding on. His entire body was dripping with sweat. It seemed as if he had just been fished out of the water. "Stop!" A loud shout was heard from the opposing team. Then, a person's silhouette flew out. Chu Yang sneered. He didn't hesitate. His sword flashed and turned into a rainbow. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? Chapter 673. Dong Wuxiang shouted loudly. He jumped up, held his saber with both hands, and slashed down like a thunderbolt. That man retreated in panic. However, this saber was extremely overbearing. It shrouded his way forward and backward. There was no other way except to meet it head-on. He roared loudly and raised his sword to meet it. At the same time, he felt endless regret in his heart. My cultivation is much stronger than this guy's. But I didn't expect that the opponent's saber and saber technique would be so abnormal. I've fallen into such a desperate situation in this head-on clash. I could have exhausted this saber emperor to death by relying on my decades of experience and cultivation if I had fought with him. But I've relied on my higher cultivation and the strength of my divine sword. And I've chosen to meet the opponent's strongest point head-on. This is truly a self-inflicted evil. The saber and the sword fiercely clashed under the watchful eyes of everyone. A loud bang resounded. That long sword shattered into tiny fragments on the ground with a bang, as if a piece of glass had been shattered. That man screamed as he was thrown out by a huge force. Blood crazily gushed out of his 7 orifices. His eyes were still filled with disbelief. How is this possible? Everyone who saw this scene, including that expert of AO clan who was rushing over, had a look of disbelief on their faces. Others might not know. But how could the people of AO clan not know? The man who had come out to fight was a trusted aide of AO clan's elder AO Tiankong. He was also his sworn brother. His name was Wu Feng. That sword was Wu Feng's heirloom. It was called Mysterious Steel Flying Snow Sword. It was forged from mysterious steel refined from star iron. It was incomparably sharp and invincible. Its firmness was second to none among all the weapons of AO clan. It was Wu Feng's biggest trump card. Wu Feng's strength wasn't considered the highest because of this sword. But he had always been the object of envy. However, this was an heirloom. So, others could only be envious. Wu Feng had come out to fight this time because he wanted to take revenge for AO Tiankong's son, AO Feng Yun. Who would have thought that such a divine weapon would be violently chopped into pieces by Dong Wuxiang in this showdown? This was beyond everyone's expectation. Dong Wuxiang let out a long and loud shout. His mighty body soared high in the wind. He took 3 big strides in the air and shouted, "Saber falls on the heartless heaven." A black lightning bolt. It fiercely chopped down. Wu Feng had already lost his soul, his internal organs were damaged, and he didn't even have the strength to move. Facing this domineering blade, Wu Feng already had no room to dodge, and could only wait for death. The saber wind was biting cold, and Wu Feng's eyes were filled with despair. That person flying over was already 30 feet away, but Dong Wuxiang didn't even bat an eyelid. It was still the same saber descends merciless heaven, without any hesitation. Since this saber was merciless. In that case, Dong Wuxiang didn't care about him at all. He only wanted to kill the enemy. Seeing that it was too late, the man couldn't help but yell anxiously, "Junior! How dare you!" His long sword flashed. It was aimed at Dong Wuxiang's throat. His sword was like a thunderbolt. Dong Wuxiang would have died under this sword if he hadn't withdrawn his saber. This was the best rescue plan in this situation. Right at this moment, someone said coldly, "Old thief! How dare you!" An unimaginably swift swordlight carried the might of the Milky Way, and fiercely struck that sword light that was thrusting towards Dong Wushang. With a snap sound, that sword broke in the air. Then the entire sword turned into pieces that looked like rotten wood. They floated down to the ground. They fell to the ground and issued a soft sound like that of a piece of wood. That person's reaction was extremely fast, and he immediately struck out with his palm. Chu Yang had already expected this. Even before he struck out with his palm, the two didn't even have time to pass each other, and his left hand fiercely swung out. With a bang, both of them somersaulted 3 times and landed on the ground. Chu Yang's hand flickered with a cold light, and his long sword made a clanging sound as if it was celebrating the victory. The opposite person looked like a man in his 40s, and was angrily looking at Chu Yang and Dong Wushang. He gritted his teeth with hatred, and asked word by word, "King of Hell Chu?" Chu Yang smiled warmly, "Master Ao? Your eyesight is really good." This man was the master of Ao clan, the younger brother of Ao Tianxing, Ao Tiankong. He was also the father of Ao clan's young master, Ao Feng Yun. On the other side, Wu Feng didn't even have time to issue a scream under Dong Wushang's saber. He had already turned into a pile of minced meat. Dong Wushang's last saber move, Saber Falls Ruthless Heaven, had used a blunt and thick saber's back. The back of his black saber was almost a foot thick. So, Dong Wushang's strength had been more than 1,000 kilograms when he had smashed down. Wu Feng had turned into a pile of minced meat on the spot, and hadn't had a single complete bone. Dong Wushang gasped for breath, and stood upright with the support of his saber. He looked at his own saber, and revealed a look of heartache. Saw-toothed nicks had also appeared on the black saber's edge. This was the first time that Dong Wushang's black saber had been damaged since he had obtained it. This clearly showed how hard and sharp his opponent's sword was. "Wushang, go back and rest." "Leave this to me," Chu Yang insipidly said. Dong Wushang complied. "You want to leave without leaving your life behind?" Bao Tiankong issued a mournful laugh. "King of Hell Chu, you know that it's me. So, when has my Ao clan's people been killed in vain? Dong Wushang must pay for my sworn brother's life." Dong Wushang snorted. He had already taken a step forward, but he stopped. He then coldly looked at Ao Tiankong. He was about to speak, but Chu Yang waved his hand to stop him. Then, he said without turning his head, "Go back. We've killed many people of Ao clan. Ao Feng Yun, won't we turn him into minced meat? Pay with his life? You wish." Dong Wushang had been angered by Ao Tiankong. But he almost laughed out loud when he heard Chu Yang's words. Ao Feng Yun was Ao Tiankong's son. Dong Wushang naturally knew this. Chu Yang had spoken these words with an extremely malicious intention. It was tantamount to sprinkling a handful of salt on Ao Tiankong's bleeding wound. Dong Wushang laughed out loud. He then walked back while dragging his saber. He was exhausted at the moment. It was extremely rare for him to be able to walk back while holding his saber. One must know that this saber weighed 570 kilograms. Chu Yang's words had touched Ao Tiankong's sore spot. He couldn't help but look up to the sky, and issued a fierce shout. His eyes turned blood red in an instant. "King of Hell Chu, a debt of blood must be paid in blood. You killed my son. And you killed my sworn brother today. Don't even think that you'll leave this place alive today. I will flay your skin, break your bones, and grind your bones to ashes." Chu Yang hypocritically said, "Master Ao, please calm down. Calm your anger for the time being. How big of a matter is it? Why do you have to put on such an irreconcilable appearance? After all, it's only your son, not your father. Besides, perhaps this matter was a misunderstanding. We only saw a good-for-nothing son of a bitch at that time. So we killed him. How could we have thought that this son of a bitch turned out to be Master Ao's son? Ignorance isn't a crime. So, let's drop this matter at this point. Anyway, Master Ao is still in the prime of his life. Go back tonight and work hard. Then, you can sow the seeds again." Ao Tiankong's entire body started to tremble. "Your son was killed. And you still have the face to say to me, how big of a matter is it?" Moreover, every sentence that followed was extremely humiliating. Ao Tiankong's entire body trembled. His lips quivered. In fact, he would have fainted on the spot if it weren't for his excellent temperament. King of Hell Chu, you're good. Ao Tiankong was extremely angry. He pointed his trembling finger at Chu Yang. He was so angry that he couldn't even speak a complete sentence. I'm good. Chu Yang looked at himself in bewilderment. Master Ao is right. Of course I'm good. Your son is dead. And I'm still alive. So, how can I not be good? Ao Tiankong roared. He didn't speak again. Instead, he pulled out his sword and attacked. Chu Yang laughed loudly. His sword flashed high up in the air. Then, the two men rolled and fought together. Behind him, Gu Duxing and the others were watching with rapt attention. Gu Duxing's right hand was already on the hilt of his sword. GMO, Luo Kadi, and Rui Butong looked at each other in dismay. They sighed in admiration in their hearts. Big brother is big brother. He is so proficient and smooth in using the skill of spurting blood out of anger. Compared to the two of us, his level of cursing is much higher. The two of us must learn from him. A dignified-looking man in a brocade robe was straddling his horse. His sharp eyes were also watching this battle. Several people beside him were looking at this side with indignant looks on their faces. What do you think? This man insipidly asked. They've gone too far. This king of Hell Chu and his brother have gone too far. Not only are they unreasonable, but they are also ruthless. We must eliminate these evildoers. A man beside him clenched his teeth. He couldn't restrain the look of anger on his face. This man was an elder of Ao clan, Ao Tianfeng. Ao Qing Yun, who had died at the hands of Gu Duxing, was his son. The previous man was the clan lord of Ao clan, Ao Tianxing. He meaningfully grunted and looked at his younger brother. Big brother, we must take revenge for this. We can't afford to lose the face of our Ao clan. Ao Tianfeng clenched his teeth. His eyes were brimming with tears. Big brother, your nephews were killed by them. So, how can we not take revenge for this? Ao Tianxing's eyes slightly flashed. He sighed and slowly said, You're right. How can we not take revenge for this? It seemed as if he was echoing Ao Tianfeng's words. However, his words were spoken in a flat and indifferent manner. There wasn't any fluctuation in his tone. His face was expressionless, and his voice sounded as if he was talking about an unfamiliar matter. However, it seemed as if he had some other intention. Ao Tianfeng heard these words, and felt a chill in his heart for no reason. His heart couldn't help but violently throb twice. His complexion couldn't help but change. An inexplicable fear rose in his heart like a tide. The anger in his heart was suppressed by fear for a moment. Don't move. Anyone who dares to act rashly will be killed. Ao Tianxing resolutely ordered. His phoenix-like eyes narrowed even more as he looked at the battle between Chu Yang and Ao Tiankong. Cold lights flickered in his narrowed eyes. Everyone around agreed at the same time. Ao Tianfeng looked at his elder brother in disbelief. He only felt a chill in his heart. A chill rose from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.